Hello, and welcome to the Set 3 for Eternal, the Dusk Road spoiler review. We've got a excellent collection of people here. Well, a couple of them are good. A couple of us are washed up, too. So I'm Lights Out Ace, and...
yeah, I guess I'm Elunex. I primarily is known for Felt Control, I guess. I played this game since open beta, so I haven't really been a part of this community for that long time. I also play on, like, a testing team with Unearthly and stuff. So I guess that's me.
So yeah, so I'm Unearthly, so member of Team OND. You might have seen me often in the ETS or at the Worlds. Well known for my Rakano play, although lately been branching out to other things and gonna see what's gonna happen with this new set.
And I'm TonyGeeeee from Team SPG. You know me from only playing one deck pretty much ever, Armory, and yeah, I released a guide on it, and I'm trying to branch out, but it's not gonna work out, of course. So I'm probably gonna just play Armory for next season or so. We'll see.
It's hard when they keep giving you more tools.
Yeah.
All right.
Did they, though? Well, we're gonna talk about
so,
that.
Yeah, so let's just jump right in. So, first card, Granite Waystone. So this is a whole cycle. There's one for each faction where if you have 4 influence of the faction that it gives, you get a little bonus effect. And I think this is the best one. It gives you a tangible effect right away. Like, you just get a 1/1 for free.
Yeah,
Right.
but, like, it still costs 1 mana to play a 1/1, and, like, it's also a risk of playing the Waystones, in my opinion, because they don't trigger your seats. So that's, like, my main concern. So you need to have a deck that's okay playing depleted lands.
Right, so I mean this could go into an aggro deck. It is also just useful, like the 1/1 Granite could also just be a chump blocker. So if you're thinking about life gain that isn't life gain synergy, this one is really good. So if you're in a deck that you just want, you know, some extra blocker, like if you're in a defensive, you know, Rakano deck, then it can be useful there. So it's going to depend on how good the Waystones are in general. I think this is one of the good ones.
Yeah, it seems all right. My question is, like, what do you play instead of it? Do you just play do you replace it for do you replace a sigil for it, or do you replace the monument for it?
I think it's going to be difficult to play Waystones and Monuments, so
Yeah.
probably going to be replacing the Monuments.
So then the question is, do you prefer having sometimes depleted seats and a 1/1 Grenadine, or always a depleted power but sometimes a 4/1 charging when you're playing probably aggro, right? So
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, I think the Monument is definitely going to be better in aggressive decks that are topping out at 5. For decks that want to go later, then this one could be better, where you want more undepleted power, and you know you can use the defensive ability of it. Like if you're playing like a rally deck or some kind of fire aggro, I do think the Monument will be better. But I can see there being some use for it.
I actually like the direction that both this cycle and the Diesel cycle, the 5-cost triple influence units, they're pushing away from greed piles and towards 1 and 2 faction decks. They're rewarding you for going really heavy into just 1 or 2 types of influence, which I think is good. I think fewer greed piles makes for more interesting deck building.
Yeah, I do agree. I think the cards in general are pretty sound. I said it's one of the better ones, but like I still haven't done the math on the risk versus like depleted versus non-depleted and stuff. But it's like definitely a card that should be looked at.
Yeah, and yeah, as Thundershot notes in the chat that there is a lot of new Grenadine tribal cards, and so it might, you know, be relevant for that, where the 4/1 charge is not a Grenadine, so maybe that will be relevant.
So moving on, I think the next 2 cards are quite clearly draft cards. So
yeah.
Caleb's Intervention. What do we think about this one? I'm leaning towards it not being great.
So I actually liked it until I realized that it's a slow spell, and then I don't like it.
same.
Yeah, slow spell makes it quite terrible because that means that the 2 ladder modes are bad as hell.
Yep, and killing an enemy weapon is notably worse than killing a relic.
Yeah.
Or killing an attachment. It can only kill weapons and relic weapons. It can't kill curses and relics.
Yeah, it's significantly like worse. It's like the fact that it's slow speed just makes it way not playable.
But would it be OP if it was a fast spell? I don't think so. Like, I don't understand why it's not a fast spell. Like, would it be
I
too
don't know,
good?
playing a 1/1 granite in a fast
Yeah.
speed. It'd be amusing.
That's
but...
very
Like,
pretty
or have
strong, actually.
have like a worse ruin, or have a worse finest tower. It's like, you know, okay, yeah, since it's modal, you can choose between all of them. It's normal that every single thing is worse than the actual card it stems from. But still, it being a fast spell, I would like this card to be a fast spell. It wouldn't even see that much play.
Like, the
in my
card would be interesting at fast speed, because like playing basically a flash unit is powerful in the sense that you can like block weapons and stuff. I'm not sure it would be OP, but it would have some better implications and applications in the game.
But that's not how it is, and so I'm gonna say in the
Yeah.
interest of time, let's move on.
It's bad.
So this set has a lot of legendaries. There are 8
Yeah.
per faction. So here's the first one. It's Kennel Master.
Yeah, so it's a 1/1 is one of the things. So the question is how many spells are you playing in, you know, any kind of, because like I feel like it's not like an aggro deck. It sort of like goes in like a Stone Square Sacrifice deck. And then the question is, can you fuel it enough, and then is it worth having something that can just get removed compared to like your other token makers that are always making more cards?
Like, here's the thing about this card. Like, 3 spells or more isn't that hard to activate. Seek, Power, Torch, Quarry, basically, and you're hitting the requirements. The problem is that it's, like, at the start of your turn, so you don't get immediate value of having 3 cards. So you need to untap with it. It's a 1/1. Pretty much as early as it's going to, like, generate a dog at turn 4. A 2/2 at 4 is, like, pretty mediocre. But it's actually, like, very mediocre. So...
Yeah, it's wishful thinking. It's like, oh, I hope this 1-mana 1/1 will stick on the board at least 1 turn. Or 2 turns, hopefully, right? And I don't see it ever happening.
There's
Like-
so many pings now, and they're just adding
Yeah.
more.
Exactly.
Yeah, like,
So-
it's... You need to do something with the card to make it broken, but I don't see it currently. It seems unlikely.
If it was
Just
a
a-
1-mana 1/2, maybe. 1/1 1/1 doesn't cut it.
Yeah, maybe. Anyways, it's a 1/1.
But yeah, I don't like it.
So speaking of 1-mana 1/1s, I think that Scrap Hound is not playable, not worth
No,
discussing.
we can-
No,
So
no,
let's
no,
move straight to
about it.
Combustion Cell here. So this didn't work out in the event at all. Just the making stuff cost less rule completely obsoleted this. But what do you think once you're able to build around it? Do you think it's worth playing this card to ramp up the Great Kiln Titan?
Like, it's so hard to evaluate ramp. Especially like conditional ramping, because unconditional ramp has the like at least benefit that you can count on it. But like sacrificing units to gain 1 power and like +2 power physical grenadin. Like, I don't like synergy based ramped cards because you're already like taking a risk by playing ramp. Because draw the wrong half of your deck and you lose. And now you're adding additional issues with it. Like, I'd rather not touch it.
Yeah, just trying to high roll even more in your high roll deck.
Yes.
Right. I feel like maybe there's some, you know, combo potential. Like, is it possible that around the Stone Scar Sacrifice Vara combo deck, that by playing this, you know, you can actually ramp to the combo faster? That's about the only application that I sort of see maybe working out. But then you're still introducing something that isn't a combo piece, isn't you know, removal to help you get there, and it isn't like draw or filter. So it you know, might not get even there even in that deck.
Yeah, like, my weakness, I'm gonna talk a bit about the Grenadin type cards here, because this is the first real or somewhat real Grenadin type card we've seen. It's like, it doesn't have any card draw, so you want to kill your own units, but you don't draw anything afterwards, so what gives?
So
Yeah, you need to make both.
I think the
Yeah, go
2-drop that Gunnar didn't want is the next card. It's Disassembler. I think this card is going to be excellent with Gunnar decks. Like, if you've ever played in a deck that has Gunnar on an assembly line and isn't Rally, you notice that you often have 4 or 5 Gunnar in play and they're just chipping your opponent. Then you play this Disassembler, and like now, even if they Harsh Rule, they're taking 6. This card seems like the 2-drop that they want.
I mean, it's the good Grimva. This is what it is.
Yeah. Actually, it's sad but true.
But yeah, I can definitely see potential for this card as a sort of burn finisher. You probably might not want to just drop it on 2, but like you build up a board and then you can just sort of drop it, and you can sort of guarantee that you get some damage through to finish your opponent. So yeah, I think I'll see some play as long as the Grenadin deck sees some play.
Out of curiosity, do you play Disassembler in like a rally style deck? Because you play 4 drones and you play 4 assembly lines. So that's like a lot of random drones that you can kill with like throwaway attacking, and they still deal damage.
Maybe Grenadin Rally is a new variant.
Yeah, like I think you probably want to play more Grenadins than just the drone in assembly line, but maybe.
Yeah, like sure. That's like, we don't need to limit it, but like it doesn't seem like completely terrible to just run in an aggro deck.
Well, we've got plenty more good Grenadin to see too.
Yeah. Like I think that card might actually be playable in Rally.
For example, there's this one, where you deal 2 to a unit, and then if you have a single Grenadin in your Void, which is laughably easy, it just deals 4 to a unit for 2. It seems pretty solid to me.
Yeah, it seems pretty good.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, this is going to be a 4 of in every Grenadin deck for sure.
It's kind of interesting that they gave it double damage. There's not a lot of ways to get actual payoff from that. Like there's what, 1 spell damage? I guess there's a few more.
So the count would be like Maelstrom Bell plus Cloud Snake Carrier plus Stone Scar Maul plus this to overwhelm a bunch of double damage to your opponent's face.
Yeah, there you go.
Like
you want Shadow Splash, right? You don't want Blue Splash with Grenadins, right?
Definitely.
But then you can't play Maelstrom Bell.
Oh no! The tragedy!
But yeah, so... But still, just 2 deal 4. That's a good breakpoint. That hits Seraph, that hits the new Minotaur. So that's going to be a...
And it will very likely hit 5 health units too, because if they block a Grenadin, then take 4 that kills.
Yeah, absolutely. In general, the card is like fine for removal at its cost. 2 mana deal 4 is powerful enough to like deal with anything on curve.
So, and also, like when you have a board of 1/1s, you really need to take care of that Sensor Titan, or those big units that are gonna block 1 damage every turn, and that's kind of takes that is one of the ways you could do it.
Yeah.
So do we think that the fire version of Talon of Nostrix is playable here? Miner's Musket?
I mean, the problem is like Talon of Nostrix was sort of falling out of favor anyway. So I'd say if Talon of Nostrix is playable, then this card is too. Like I like the discount, but the question is like, is a 2 attack relic weapon useful? And right now I don't really think so.
Nope.
Is the discount worth playing this garbage?
I mean, absolutely not.
Like
that's like the question you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, so like in what deck does this go? My first guess is Armory, I guess, because or some kind of aggressive tempo-y deck.
Yeah, it could go into some, like theoretically you also put it in something like Skycrag or Rakano Aggro, but
still, like okay, you use Skycrag.
So, I mean, there are more like 3/2s like Mirrors hanging around, but there's also going to be a lot of X3s or bigger, and it's just not going to do anything.
So not good enough.
It's like you really want to play free only Ronin. It's like it won't reduce. Like if you play this in an aggressive deck, then it means that the reduction is not. It won't hit 2 that much, right? Because you're usually gonna reduce like a 1-drop most of the time.
I mean, the thing is that you get the reduction as soon as turn 3, where it actually does still matter because you still have cards in your hand, so you can play your drop and then like a completely free card. But I just think that the card on its own needs to justify itself, and it doesn't.
Yeah, no, I pretty much agree with that statement. Like, I think the main card is too weak to like consider the cost reduction.
Alright, so that brings us to the first card of a huge theme in this set, Oni Cave Diver. This combines a couple of themes, one being Praxis Relics. A bunch of the Praxis cards get stronger when you have a relic. And then also Explorers. There's a whole bunch of cards that have synergy between Explorers and Sentinels. So do you think Oni Cave Diver it's a 2-cost 4/2 if you have that relic, but do you think there's a good enough density of cheap relics to make this card playable in some sort of relic aggro?
Relic aggro.
So what's the relic you want to have? Obelisk? Is there another one?
It's like Power
Like
Stone.
it's too
Treasure
late.
Room.
Like you need to be playing a relic on like 1, 2, or 3 in order for this to be good. Like you either need to be following it up at latest. Like I feel like playing a 2-drop because like a 4/2 is still aggressive, right? Like that's not a blocker. So if you're not attacking as a 4/2, then I don't think it's that good. I don't like it. It has no battle skills, and the ultimate is like nice, but again, like the card itself needs to justify playing, and I don't think it does.
I think the card is confused. What we've seen is basically the relics are a bit of a slower format, and the ultimate also indicates it's a slower card because scrying in aggro decks for 2 is terrible. And like a 4/2 is an aggressive card, so you don't want to block with it. So it's just like doesn't know what it wants to do, and like the Explorer tag and the Oni tag are kind of irrelevant on it.
All right, so moving on to the next page, I think the next card we're talking about is Yeti Sage. So it's basically a 2/1 for 2, which is passable, but it really wants you to be playing Pummel or Finest Hour or even Rampage. If you're playing any of those, I think this card is pretty good. Like I think it'll definitely see play in the Yeti deck. And like the Trail Stories is just free value. Like making a spell cost 1 less is never going to hurt you.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Unearthly.
Well, what I was gonna say is like, I mean, so a part of this is also hinging on whether or not weapons aggro can be good again. I haven't checked to see whether there's any other good weapons to really curve off of this. But like that's the thing with double damage is that it's really good when paired with weapons to play on units. So you know there's maybe some potential there, but it will just depend on whether or not you need to be playing things with battle skills that get you through combat, like quick draw or flying, or whether or not you can actually just go on the ground for the weapons decks.
Like, my problem with this card is the fact that you're paying 2 mana for a 1/1 up front, and while Trail Stories might be relevant, like, to me it seems like playing fairly low to the ground deck, so it's probably not going to be relevant in the first, like, 2 turns. And, like, there's just something of an issue with playing 2 mana 1/1s, even though it's, like, it deals 2 damage. It's still pretty mediocre, and like Ace, you said you want to play like tricks with it, but like playing mediocre tricks to make a mediocre card good seems doomed to fail before you even try.
Does it seem mediocre?
I think it's bad, but
Yeah, I
being
mean, I
nice.
can see that.
I mean,
Like, it's
this intuition. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Like, it's just the fact like trying to make like suboptimal cards good by playing other like mediocre to bad cards isn't really a good way to win games. It's gonna be like hilarious highlight reels where you like get in for like 14 damage because you pump it to high heavens, but you're gonna like have
literally
like
punt it. That's what
yeah. But like on average, you're gonna like lose because you play cards like this, in my opinion.
So like the dream scenario here is you play Yeti Sage into like Shogun Scepter, right? Is that the dream scenario with this card?
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
you
I
deal
guess when
6
you put it that
damage?
way, that's part of the reason why I've also not really liked Crown Watch Paladin after the nerf, because that curve used to give you a 3 health on the unit, which meant that you could attack into every 1-drop and most 2-drops. Like, yeah, you still trade with Instigator, but you got 2 Warcry and you have an Oni running left over. So this one sort of has that same problem that you play Shogun Scepter on it, and then you're trading with 1-drops, as well as obviously 2-drops. Now this thing does force trades with bigger units, but yeah, the fact that it still goes into like your opponent's Pyro Knight or whatever does make that curve kind of feel bad.
So it's not taking Arcana of Outlaw's place. Pretty much we'll only see
Yeah,
play
I
in
don't
the
think
Yeti
so.
tribal deck.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it could be okay if like other Yetis are able to support it. Like let's say you have other Yetis that give +1/+1. Like if you have Womp already and you play this card, but like you can't play this on curve and expect good results. And if you wait, then it has diminished results. So yeah, it's gonna be a hard one to cast. I don't know.
So speaking of tribal payoffs, you got our first Lord here, Coal Scrounger. So it's half a rally for all your little Grenadin, and then as a bonus you get a firebomb. So I think the firebomb is pretty much completely irrelevant. But pumping all your Guardian by +1 is not bad when they are the go wide tribe. I think this card sees play in the Guardian deck.
You basically double their attack damage, so it's like it's actually a powerful card in that thing. So like going from 1 to 2 is a significant jump.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's
I
gonna
like
be a
it.
good card.
Plus all the Grandin are just so cute.
Hinges on... It'll hinge on the Grandin deck being a deck, but if it is, this is very likely to be a part of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I said it was a good card, assuming, as you said, Grandin is a thing, because as just a standalone card, it's trash, of course. No, it's bench on synergy.
So,
absolutely.
Speaking of synergy, so it seems like pretty obvious that there's a Grandin deck. Like, there's tons of Grandin support, but Milos Izalio, heir to the Rebellion, relies on Gunslinger support, which I'm a little less sure of. It's split across 3 factions, and so like if you're a 3-faction aggro deck, you're pretty much guaranteed to fail 30% of the time from the outset. I'm just kind of not a Gunslinger tribal believer, but I guess Unearthly is the one who's going to tell me if I'm wrong or not.
Well, right. So I haven't had a chance to go through to evaluate the entire thing to see whether Gunslingers are a thing or not. I do really like Milos if Gunslingers is a thing. And that like all of his payoffs are really good. So like we were saying, double damage. You know, having 3 health is a lot more than 1 that the Yeti Sage has. And so if you put a weapon on him, he's actually like attacking through everything. And he also like doesn't die to Virus Favor. He does die to Torch. But there's a lot of payoff there for him. And if you do put a weapon on him, the 2 power is really relevant because Rokano really likes running tricks. Even if you run him in like Stone Scar, it still gives you the option to play either Annihilate or Rapid Shot or Torch in combat to blow out whatever your opponent is trying to do. So like as a standalone card, I really like it. I don't know yet whether Gunslingers is going to be a thing or not. That is what we're gonna have to wait and see. But if there is any Gunslinger deck, it's going to have Milos in it.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to my good teammate, Paradox, who just got like a mono red deck day 1 today. He just destroyed me earlier today, and like his mono red deck seems very, very nice, and this card is in it, of course. And yeah, like you seem to all have a good numbers of Gunslingers in red. Aren't they all red actually?
No.
Well, red.
There's a lot of
fire
Justice
is where
ones.
they're focused, but there's also some in Shadow and there's also some in Justice.
Okay, but I mean, still, the majority of Gunslingers are in red colors. So
yeah, like that's what I was saying. Like, there's not going to be any Argenport Gunslinger deck that just seems silly.
What, you have like Auric Vigilante and stuff like that? That's complete. Great.
Alright,
But,
so
like,
Purge the Darkness is our only Night Hoser. I don't think it's playable, but it is funny that we got Detonate.
There is actually something I want to talk about this card, because Counter 25 is currently not a thing. But if we get more cards which has like relevant damage to the enemy player, eventually we might get a burn deck. And right now it doesn't exist, but maybe eventually.
I guess I do want to point out just how vicious of a hoser this is if Knight becomes super popular like Rally was last month. Like, if 30% of your opponents are going to be dropping a Nightfall guy on turn 3, and then you get to follow up with this, you get to draw a card from Knight, and they don't. So it actually is an incredibly brutal hoser to Knight.
Right.
But I don't think that Knight is going to reach that sort of meta saturation, so I don't think this card will see play.
Yeah, but it's like to the enemy player, right? So it's basically 3 mana do nothing in most cases.
I think the idea is that, like, so you get a little bit of burn, but in general, it replaces itself, right? That's the idea. So the fact that your card didn't do anything, the only problem is it's low tempo, right? So you ended Night, and then you didn't do anything else. So, like, they played a unit that activated Night, and now you're like, well, I'm going to end the Night. It's generally going to be not enough of an effect.
Yeah, like I said, if Knight gets, as I said, if Knight gets to the point where it's like actually a thing, then it's, as I said, it's 3 cards, but at tempo disadvantage. But I'm actually more afraid of just having counter 25 than anything else at this point.
Yeah, I don't think we have it yet, so...
No, like as of right now, we don't see it, but in the future it's cards to keep a track of.
So I feel obligated to click on Ruby Catalyst because it's a rare, but I don't have anything to say about this card.
No.
Okay.
Ugh.
So we got Ruin Crawler Yeti, a new, more feral Furnace Mage. I don't think it's good enough. I think I'd actually rather have the 4/3 than the 2/2, but I'd rather not play either. The card just doesn't seem good enough.
Shatterglass Mage.
It's gonna be like, let's say in ETS someone's gonna play a Yeti tribal deck. This is going to be a sideboard card, only in that situation.
Yeah, pretty much.
So here's the first Goofy Relic I think is playable. So Scrap Heap gives all of your Grenadin charge. So once per turn you pay 5 to make a Grenadin. I think you ignore that. This card is made so that you play Giant... What's the name of this guy? Topple Tower? Yes, it's made to play a Giant Topple Tower and just one-hit KO your opponent.
Huh.
Yeah, that's probably where you're at. You might actually be playing the new other Grenadin Lord, the Greer Conjurer, for like some random alphas, but that seems terrible as well. I think if you're ever looking at using the second line of text on this card, you're losing the game.
Maybe,
like,
right?
5.
So here's one thing, like, let's say you're playing against a Praxis opponent that doesn't have any overwhelm units. You got them down to 3, right? And so by continuing to activate the ability to chump block some damage, you draw your torch and win the game. Like, I think it's, you know, not like if you activate it, you lose. But, you know, it's not going to be part of your regular games. But
Oh, yeah,
I definitely see it
like,
being, you know, somewhat relevant in that it's the life gain that draws you into your burn.
Oh yeah, like sure, that's fair. I do like agree with that point of view. I'm just saying like if you're looking to use that to like try to win games, other than like
Right, no,
finishing
it's
off
not
your
gonna do
opponent,
that.
you're gonna lose games.
Alright, so speaking of Topple Tower, that's our next one. So this has a little bit of strange tension with the Grenadins, because most of the Grenadins are little 1/1s for 1, they make removal blank. Topple Tower is just a huge removal magnet. As such, I think he goes in bigger decks like Scrappy Hour. Like, if you have Scrap Tank and Topple Tower and some other threat, then you're starting to tax your opponent's removal with your giant guys that have Grenadin synergy. The 7-cost guy is another one that would fit in that deck, I think. I think that Go Big Grenadin is actually going to be good.
Yeah, so the one thing to keep in mind is that, like, you actually need your Grenadins to die, right, for this to be good. Like, if you just have one dead or no dead, then it doesn't really do anything useful. So it does sort of seem to want you to be not only playing Grenadin, but playing it over a longer game.
Like my problem with this card is the fact that it's basically a vanilla dork for like that can be massive but have 4 health. And like it doesn't help push through damage unless you like play cards on it. So how do you make this actually hit phase?
So with Grenadin decks, like Stone Scar Sacrifice decks, they have a lot of interaction, right? Like you have Madness, you have Combust, you have Annihilate, and we have that new deal 4 damage. So you have some reasonable ways of, you know, attacking through. You know, like if your opponent is playing one big unit per turn, this is going to help punish that. And then on the other side, if they take a turn off to play a removal that they can't, you know, also tempo play out another, you know, unit, then you just, you know, keep attacking with your Grenadin. So, you know, I think in that style of deck, it can, you know, just be fine on its own, working with all of that synergy.
Yeah, that's fair. Like, yeah,
it's always going to 1-for-1 something. Like, it's going to be big enough to trade with any unit or eat or remove a spell.
Yeah, no, like I do agree with that. I'm just like a bit worried about giant units that don't actually do anything on their own, or don't like trade. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but when it only costs 3.
That's
Yeah, like...
fair. It's actually really cheap. Like even if you just have like play Grenadin drone and an assembly line, then it suddenly like hits for 10 if they all die. So yeah.
Yeah,
like,
also 4 health.
It's really easy to get like massive in that front end, but yeah.
Yeah, and 4 health is pretty high, right? It's
a fairly robust number.
It passes the torch test.
Yeah, there you go. So I think, like, I mean, this card will probably be like a 4 ofs in any Grenadin deck, right? You want to have this card. And yeah, I think like early game, the worst it can ever do is just be a blocker. And the dream scenario is like you've played, like, I don't know, 3-4 Grenadins first, and like you ace space, and your opponent's like, what the hell is he doing? And then he blocks, and then you have like a 4-4 for 3, and you're super happy. That's like the dream scenario.
Yeah. I mean, important to note is that it does like die to silence. But
Fairly
yeah,
much.
we'll have to see how much silence stays in the meta.
Yeah, combos in the deck.
All right, so moving on to Tumblebang. You think this card is playable to ramp into Great Kiln Fiend or Great Kiln Titan?
No.
No.
You don't
We
choose
can
when you get
skip
plus
this,
3 power,
please.
right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. It
Like-
can just be on your opponent's turn. Okay, yeah, that's
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your opponent's There's favorite. You're sad because you played a 3-mana 3/1 that does nothing.
bad. There are also a couple of like garbage 4-cost relics here. Like, I mean, I guess they're not totally garbage. They do things, but I think they're too expensive. Like for 4 in the relic deck, you want to be playing the 4-mana 7/7 PogChamp.
Definitely.
It's gonna
the
be a
Barbarian
4-mana
can-
9/7, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, if you play Ancient
and Barbarian
Defenses
camp are all
first.
bad. There are like both of them all terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think about our Oni Lord, Kyojin Grand Shugo? I think that being a 4-cost 3/2 just disqualifies him based on
Like,
size. It's tiny.
Yeah.
Me and Unearthly had the discussion about it. It's the fact that you don't have Onis that curve into it.
Mhm.
Like, you play Oni Ronin and then you're like kind of upset because you don't really have underplayable Onis. And it's like, well, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of like, not really playable, or I think at least a few not very playable ones at like 2, and then the Shogun Scepter. But then that still only makes them 4/3s, and he himself is a 3/2, and he's Warcry 2, but he doesn't have stats to attack. So yeah, I just don't like this card.
In general, don't play bad cards to make other bad cards better.
That's Elunex's lesson of the day.
I mean,
Don't play
well,
bad
well,
cards that take other
again,
bad
that's
cards to
not
make them good.
I mean, I guess bad cards like the Grenadin Lord, right, is a bad card because it's a 3-power 2/2. But the thing is that its effect is relevant. So I'd say don't completely take that at everything.
Well, the
Well,
Granite
the
Lord,
thing
you
is-
play it with other good cards, like Granite Drone
Yeah.
Assembly
Yeah.
Line.
I mean,
It
yeah.
makes
The
other cards
Grenadins
better.
themselves are good cards.
Because,
but
like,
Drone is
yeah,
good
the
card.
Grenadin cards are not terrible. Drone and Assembly Line are fairly good cards, powerful cards. Like, the Drone on its own is bad. But,
Okay.
like, the cards it's synergizing with are good. Like, if you had multiple Oni Ronins, then this card wouldn't be terrible
Okay.
due to that fact.
Yeah. All right, makes sense.
I think the next few cards are pretty skippable and forgettable, even the rares.
Jack.
But moving on to
Oh yeah, I mean,
the first of a diesel cycle, a Jack Hunted Fugitive. This guy is
okay,
obviously...
wait. Diesel cycle? Are we really gonna like accept this?
Yeah, it's the
Is it
diesel
why
Why is
is
it
cycle.
called?
thing?
That's
Why
what
is
they're
it called
called.
Diesel?
Because
Sure, go ahead, Noah.
XXX, the movie where Vin
Oh.
Diesel played it.
Oh god.
That's the whole reason. I mean, I'm
No,
just having
where's-
doubts as to.
They're
are
also
we
just
really-
straight
really-
gas. I don't think you can deny
Yeah,
that.
Ugh.
Ace
That's what I thought
explained
you
this
meant. I
to
thought you
me.
were talking about the fuel.
Yeah, like, Ace explained this to me, and it's, like, fucking great. It's so cheesy, but it's fantastic.
But anyways,
I'm just asking questions here.
Jack is just unbeatable in combat. He gets even more unbeatable as time goes by. He makes the rest of your team all unbeatable. The problem is, where does this guy fit? Like, do you put him in Praxis? In Praxis, he directly competes with World Bear Behemoth. Do you put it in, like, Rakano? In Rakano, he directly competes with Soulfire Drake. Like, what sort of deck wants this effect, even though it is massively powerful?
Like, as I see it right now, he's kinda homeless. He's basically like Goku on steroids when it comes to, like, killing your opponent. The issue is that it has to attack to get the effect. Because for going to 1+1+1 to +3+3 +6+6, and then, like, hitting 10 out of nowhere is actually really strong.
Mhm.
And the problem is, like, as you said, it's 5 mana, triple fire. So it's in direct competition with Soulfire Drake, who has charge, and that's a really big thing on 5 drops. And it's like, do you play it in Praxis? And, like, maybe, but I'm not convinced.
I mean, the interesting application of Jack is in a Quartermaster deck, right? Because if you have any number of units besides Jack that can attack with them, then you can play down a Quartermaster, and then you're drawing X cards, where X is your number of attackers. And so that's obviously a powerful effect. It's just sort of, is there a deck that you can build around Quartermaster where Jack is just a part of it? Because I don't think a dedicated combo deck in that way is going to do anything. Because in the end, you're still drawing cards, like, right? You need to win the game. But it's at least an interesting interaction that's worth investigating.
I don't agree with like playing Quartermaster. That seems like true high variance. Because like if you want to play solely Quartermaster to hit off Jack, then you're playing like a bit too much on the hope. Like Quartermaster at the end of the day is a 2/2. And like even if you play it on the turn where you're attacking and you're going to get the guaranteed trigger off, like you're still gonna dilute your deck by playing worse cards in general, like Quartermaster. And like, how big are your boards going to be to you, like justify playing Quartermaster in your deck?
Right.
Yeah, I don't like Quartermaster. I think the card is strong enough on its own. You don't need to live in magical Christmas land.
Yeah, it's a 5/7/5 with quick draw. Like I feel like this unit is still a good unit. Is it good enough to overshadow like Soulfire Drake? Maybe not, but why not both? Why not just play this in a like mid-rangey Stone Scar deck, maybe something like that, where they like Shadow doesn't have very good 5/6 drops, right? So you just play the fire ones, and this seems like a good addition. It seems like a good one. Doesn't seem like the auto include, but I mean I would consider it if I was playing some kind of like Stone Scar mid range.
Yeah, like I think we all agree the card on its own, it's powerful. It's just hard to like envision a home currently where it fits. Like it
I'm
ends
sure it'll
games
find a home
really
somewhere.
quickly.
It's just not
Like,
obvious
it ends
where the home
games
is.
fast.
I mean, what if you put this in the Grenadin deck?
Well,
Why?
Why?
Why is
Because
there-
it anthems your board, and you,
yeah, it's powerful when you attack.
You're only in mono fire. Like you can choose whatever you want for your other faction. Like there's no way for Stone Scar, like as an additional just anthem effect. Like you attack and all your Grenadin are bigger now.
Okay, I misread the card actually. I thought the +1/+1 thing was only on Jack. It's on all attacking units.
Yeah,
oh,
no,
never
it's
mind.
not.
Okay, I see why. Sorry.
Oh, that card's
Yeah,
way
that's-
more crazy than I thought it was, and I already thought it was
Yeah.
good.
So yeah, you have 8 Grenadin, and then he is way better than.
That's
just
why I
that
said it
one.
like it's Coco on steroids in the terms of how it ends games.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
like the ramping is quicker than Coco's.
Right,
The only
'cause
problem
it's-
is that you have to attack. So well,
Well,
I hope you like Eileen's choice, I guess, but that's about it.
yeah. Well,
Still gets the effect off on your other guys.
Oh yeah, no, like it's still good, but it's just like not Coco where you sit on your ass and wait.
Yeah. Also, the problem in playing this in like a Grenadin deck is that all the vanquishes and all the slays are going to be left in your opponent's hand because they won't use it on a 1/1. So like this is gonna get removed all day, every day if you play this in small tokens kind of deck.
Yeah, you gotta play it with Scrap Tank.
Yeah,
there
like
you go.
I said, the deck isn't figured out, but like the card on its own is powerful. I think that's
Yeah,
enough.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
It's gonna
let's
seem like-
move on.
Alright, yeah. So, I mean, I think Parapet Sentry is interesting as a way to Searing Blaze a flyer, if you will. 3 damage to the player in the unit, but I don't think it's big enough to see play over the other insane 5 drops we were just discussing.
It's a 5-drop
Yeah,
that's
no,
conditional,
it's not
like
good.
rather not.
So, let's move on to our new OTK Overlord, Molten Fist. I think the idea is you play this with Stronghold's Visage and just crank up to 1,000,000 armor and then kill your opponent in 1 hit.
But then you play
Yeah,
3
I mean, it's
factions.
definitely interesting there. But I feel like it's going to be a fun jank card in that kind of deck, and that's it.
Yeah, like it directly competes. I'm gonna talk about Armory. This directly
That's why you're
competes with. Yeah, it directly competes with Daisho, and Daisho is a better card in almost any way. Because Daisho doesn't lose its attack value whenever it hits. It hits 2 things. It deals more damage if like your opponent doesn't have any units. It's like I don't know. I with this card, I guess when you have artisans, it double buffs, right? Because you give 1 armor and 1 attack, and the armor also gives 1 attack. So you basically gives your weapon +2/+1 with every artisan hits, but still.
Can't beat Daisho. The Stone Scar Maul problem.
Yeah, it's hopeful. It's hopeful that like, so you want to play this alongside other armor gain cards, and Armory lately has drifted away from a lot of armor gains. So like, I don't know. You would need more things, and these things are not good enough. Like Tavrod has been superior to Throne Warden, right? And we've seen some Tronordans, but we've seen way more Tavrots, and like, which means that the armor gain is gonna be lessened, which means this card's gonna be not as good. I don't know. Not a fan.
Yeah.
I don't have any strong opinions. I do think it's going to be like a really silly card in like Visage, because you're gonna see like this hit like 40 damage for some like unknown reason, and it's like I'm not gonna say it's good for that reason, but it's gonna be funny and you're gonna have some highlight reel. The art is nice, I guess. I think that's about it.
Yeah, the art is nice, and yeah, it's basically a 6-cost sort of Sky King when it gets buffed, but still. Would you play a 6 mana sort of Sky King? I'm not even sure.
I would.
Yeah, I would.
Okay, you kill a 6/6 and then the other 6/6 just kills you. Like, it still goes 1-for-1. I don't
Sure,
know.
but it's like still like sort of Sky King for 6 is powerful.
You
But
don't
like
want,
it's
like your 6-cost weapon to go 1-for-1.
it's a mono-faction card as well, so you could like play it in a different deck. You don't need to play it in necessarily like an armor or shell. You could play that as a top-end finisher in some other deck. Because it's basically like deal 6 at fast speed, so it's not bad in that sense, but like I'm not convinced about the card in general. I don't really like it that much.
Alright, so let's talk about our new dragon friend, Sky Terror. So I've actually played a lot of decks, mostly like Praxis type decks or like other big time decks like that, where you are great at creating a stall, but you can't break the stall once you get there. And this is our not bad Cloud of Ash.
I'm actually really happy about this card. When I saw it, I was like, yeah, I want to play this and Soulfire Drake in the same deck. In general, cards that have the problem that they need to attack to extract value suffer from the fact that they're like kind of slow and they die often before they get to do anything. But it's already double fire, and it's basically like you want to play top end. And it like Soulfire curves perfectly into it, so you're very likely to like get a flying charge dragon, and like playing Cloud of Ash on their board.
This guy does not have charge. He has Warcry.
No, I told you with Soulfire Drake.
Oh, okay.
And your Soulfire Drake dies. I mean, do you just like, if your opponent has a Titan, do you just like suicide this into it?
Well, it depends on the board state. Like, if you can push lethal, why not? Like, it's so hypothetical. Like, if they have 4 Titans and you don't have units to kill him, no, you're obviously not going to do it. But if you can give it charge,
there is
like,
a non-hypothetical
Soulfire,
place for this card. It's the like big Praxis decks. Like, you can play Praxis not aggressively, but the problem is you get into a board stall that you can't break. This guy breaks it.
Yeah, so it's definitely an interesting card there. Do you think it can go into any deck other than Praxis?
Probably.
I'm not convinced it can go into any deck other than like, the thing is we don't have that many fire decks. 6.
Yeah, it's not that
so,
aggressive.
yeah.
I think that other fire decks are gonna want to play cheaper cards.
Yeah, like I do think it's like basically Praxis as of right now. We could maybe see other decks that could play it, but like from what we know currently, it's basically Praxis.
Why not Stolskar mid?
Well, because that deck's bad.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is it? Is it though? We've seen 2 cards that, in my opinion, could be very good in Stolskar mid.
I guess we'll have to. Yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah, I'll hold
Maybe this guy will see
judgment.
play in other shells. And this is certainly like a powerful enough card. Like I think Sky Terror will see play.
Oh yeah, Sky Terror is good,
Oh, yeah.
in my opinion. It might
like
be
it, yeah.
slow, but...
I think Gear Cruncher is the other expensive fire card that will definitely see play. It's so easy for this guy to just fill up your entire board. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about this guy already. He was spoiled 2 weeks ago, but I think this guy's a shoe-in for the Grandin, like scrappy hour type decks.
He may be
I mean, it
disappointed.
depends. Like, you do need to get all the way up to 7, so it depends where you want your Grenadine curve to end. But like, definitely, if you hit 7, then you want to play this card.
Yeah,
That's
and
the card could
that
hit
pay 3
face.
ability is not an ultimate. You can just kill something every turn.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
but like you have to exhaust stuff, and like I was hoping it could hit face so you could kill people.
It's
Alright,
yeah,
not
like,
hit face, but it kills things so that you can eventually hit face.
sure.
So our last fire card is the man himself, the Great Kiln Titan. I think this guy creates a deck archetype all by himself.
I agree. I think that the big Praxis, like with lots of ramp, I definitely think that there is some potential there, and this is a good card that it will always get value. And then if you have just like an obelisk or some, Power Stone in your deck, you have the potential to, just get some value from that. where late game they usually did nothing.
Yeah, like we have Yosharaj now in Eternal.
Unfortunately, it's not quite that good.
I know, I'm kidding.
The relic text is just so goofy and tacked on. Like, he's just this huge card advantage fatty, and like, oh yeah, and also when you play a relic, deal damage to its cost to an enemy, and also draw a card, and that card costs 2 less. Like, Praxis's thing is just like unnecessary add-on text on already good cards.
It's like it's like all the card creators are like, oh yeah, also this, oh yeah, I could do this, oh yeah, and this and this.
I think it will be more relevant than, say, for example, pre-nerf Bard's ultimate text. I think this will like randomly come up. You know, it's not something that you can really play around. There's no point in like putting relics in your deck for this guy. But you will often be playing relics in Praxis decks, and so then it'll just happen. Like, you could play this guy, flip over a Power Stone, deal 2 damage, you know, and be happy.
I'm just gonna like jump in here
and
be the person who spoils it. I don't think this card is good.
Really?
Yeah, the card on itself is powerful. I'm just looking at 8 mana, double fire, and 8 mana, double fire. Like, I don't see myself ever hitting that in a fire deck where I want that line of text that I play the top card of my deck. Like, are you planning to play Praxis and hit 8 mana? Seems suspicious to me.
Yeah.
And then you get like a free 6/6 on the board. Yeah, I would.
I think you build around it. I don't think it goes in an existing Praxis. I think that you build a deck from the ground up, and you have to be careful to avoid stuff like Harsh Rule in your deck or whatever that would just kill him.
Yeah, it's just like, I just see it as going to kill itself more often than not.
Well, let's go on to some less controversial card. Amber Waystone. It goes in Life Force and that's it?
Yeah.
It's mediocre.
Like maybe if there's some 2-faction, like, you know, Combre deck that just wants some extra life gain versus aggro, it could go in there, but it's not that exciting.
Like, these are the cards when I say that I'm not sure the Waystones are like worth the risk. Life gain is normally very minor, and your deck needs to take specific advantage out of it. Like, there's no way that every time deck is going to play this.
Every goddamn time.
Yes, every hacking time deck is going to play this. Because, like, just the risk of having depleted seeds are like a huge risk, so you need to have the payoff actually be something relevant.
Yeah, it's
Gaining 2 health is not relevant in every good deck. Yeah, it's the worst one in my opinion.
So speaking of the worst one...
I mean, I don't know, I think Justice is worse. But...
Is Azurite Prixis the worst card in Eternal? I don't even know what this card does.
I
mean, I can read it, but it does nothing.
Hey, here's the thing. If it's on the bottom of your deck, then it's a free card.
Sure.
I was gonna say, like, you get like a free draw, but like actually you don't even get a free draw.
Like, I assume this card is designed to like do things with Moment of Creation. That's like my assumption, but I'm not sure it's good.
Why?
I'm certain it's
so
bad.
it's a relic, not a
When your
spell.
unit dies, discard the top card of your deck, I guess.
So you're like trying to self-mill, but like, I don't know.
It's also there for the like we were talking about, like the relic aggro, right? If relic aggro is gonna be a thing, and you just need like random relic to enable stuff to make your cards better.
Sure.
I mean, it costs 0. You can play it whenever.
Yeah, it's basically a weapon.
It
It's
does
still-
nothing.
like, 0 cost cards are still an investment in your deck because they take up deck slots.
Well,
So
and they
it's-
also take up
It
cards.
still costs a card even though it doesn't cost tempo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming no one will ever play this card. This is the new Idol of Destrin.
Yeah, sure.
That idle's better.
So
I don't
speaking of
think they will
cards
think
I think are
competitively.
bad, I think Hesitate is not good at all. Remand, this
No,
is not. It does not draw a card. I don't think this card is playable.
If that's cycle, then it would be okay, but still not good.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
I don't
cycling
like
would
it.
probably be pretty good.
I mean, the
Anyway.
shadow one is way
I'd say it
better.
would make it be good. That would be a good card.
Anyways,
But it doesn't,
next.
so it's bad.
Unplayable. Got it. Do you think Talir's intervention is worth talking about? I think
Actually,
that
I wanna poke Lucky Prospector because if we can get a relic deck, a 1 mana 3/3 endurance is not garbage.
So you're saying that Azurite Prixis is good?
Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm looking at the other cards we have in the set.
Yeah, but then you
Like-
play a 1/1 1/1, and then what? Like the Greenest Power Stone on turn 2?
Well, no, I'm kind of looking at the other cards that we have.
Which is?
Well, you have, as I said, Power Stone, you have the Cryptic Etching, which is like basically pay 2 to scry, even though that's extremely expensive. I'm not that convinced this card is complete trash, but I don't think it's that good.
Yeah, one
It's
cost
weird.
3/3 is worth jumping some hoops through. Yeah, I don't know if it's worth
Yeah,
jumping
like-
through the hoops of playing cheap relics in an aggro
No,
deck.
like
Yeah.
that might be the case that I'm like, because again we have the issue of like having random fucking relics like Ancient Bauble. It's like it's just not good, but is it worth trying to play bad cards? Probably not.
No.
I think I convinced
think
myself
so.
the card is bad by talking about it actually.
Alright.
So I think Talir's intervention isn't quite good enough. Just all three of the modes are worth like 1/3 of a power. I don't think that adds up to a card that's worth putting in your deck. The art is dope,
Yeah.
dope though.
Twilight Hunt is decent in my opinion.
That was gonna be super good. It was gonna be a 4-of. It's gonna be way better than Xena Initiation in any dinosaur deck, and Dinosaur is gonna be a good thing. This card is
Predator's
bunkers.
instinct just keeps getting sadder and sadder.
Huh?
What did you say?
It'll be interesting how Nightfall plays out in dinosaur decks, like whether it's Elysian or Xenon.
Oh, this is also our first Nightfall card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we should touch on that, I guess. Might be relevant. So, Nightfall is basically, when you play it, the game turns to night state for one turn of each player. And when it's night, you draw one additional card and take one additional damage from drawing the card. And it transfers, so your opponent draws the card first, and then you draw the card on your upkeep. Which is why we were talking about the prior card in Fire that ends night. The fact that you would not be able to draw the card if you triggered the Nightfall.
Right. So your opponent gets to draw the card first, but you can still make your deck so that not only do you get Nightfall effects, but if you're an aggro deck, generally cards are worth more to you than say you're a control opponent who's already playing more power, more card draw of their own.
Yeah, pretty much. It's very powerful.
I think
for
it's an aggressive, focused mechanic, right? Like if you're playing a control deck,
Definitely.
you don't want this because you're not able to use all of your cards that quickly.
Yeah, but also you're not that sad to see it when your opponent plays Nightfall. Like
No,
it
no,
depends. But like when I'm in control deck and I can draw 2 cards in one turn, I'm gonna be pretty happy because that means I'm gonna assure I'm gonna play Harsh Roll on turn 5.
Like sure, you
No matter
you find your answers quicker, but the thing is, they also are able to maybe beat the harsh rule, because they can reload, or they can just kill you before you play it, or they find the answer to deal with harsh rule in general. So it's not just symmetrical effects are hard to evaluate when they aren't completely broken.
Yeah. So we'll have to see how it plays out.
But I think
Okay.
it's the most interesting mechanic that they've added pretty much since the dawn of the game. Like this is
Oh yeah,
very,
it's
very
an
fun.
interesting and fun mechanic.
I think it's interesting and it's well designed and it's going to create some interesting games, and
Yep.
I do like it in general. I think it's very, very well made.
So speaking of Twilight Hunt, do you guys agree that it's like a super good card, or am I the only one?
I mean,
who,
it's Xenon Initiation is a great card, and this is Xenon
Yep.
Initiation for dinosaurs. So
The
Play dinosaurs,
thing is,
play
it's
the card.
conditional.
Yeah, if dinosaurs are good, this card is great.
Yeah, that's the thing. If dinosaurs are good, it's great, but it condition play this
I
in
think
practice, for
that
instance.
Xenon Initiation is still better for any deck.
Yeah,
that
if you-
is not dinosaurs.
Yeah, if
Like
you
the
play
plus one is
Praxis,
so good.
play Praxis, you play Initiation, play Dinos, you play this. Basically, that's how it works.
I also have another question for you. Is this card straight just an upgrade to the other one we had, which I don't know what the card is, Predator's Instinct,
Predator's
I think,
Instinct.
the 1/1 Gift Killer? Is
Well-
this just a better card?
So Nightfall isn't necessarily an upside, so it's not a strict upgrade. It's not strictly better.
If your opponent takes advantage of Nightfall better than you do, then Predatory Instinct is better than this for that specific circumstance. If you're Nightfall well, then this is better. Completely depends on circumstances, and it's really hard to say that a card is flat out better when they do very similar things. And one of them is synergizing with an entire basically archetype. So if you can use Nightfall, yes, it's better. If not, I'd probably stay away from it because you're going to kill yourself.
I don't know, I think, let's say we're in set 1 and this card is printed instead of Predatory Instinct, Xenon Killers would play this card, or if they had the choice between both of them, they would play this card, even if they don't really benefit. Have like they,
Sure,
they,
like,
they don't
that's...
have like benefit from Nightfall that much. They would still much rather have this card instead of Predator's Instinct.
I think we need to speed it up a little bit.
Yeah, like, basically
we're
the
not
card
gonna
is good.
finish.
Yeah, alright, so
Card is good
Cryptic
in
Etchings
finals.
is a card Elunex mentioned. I don't think it's playable outside of some relic deck that I don't think is going to get there.
Yeah.
Disjunction, I think, is a very interesting
Oh, yeah.
removal spell. You can only play it if you yourself are playing attachments you want to bring back, I think. But I just like that they're getting more main deckable attachment removal to help out ladder.
I think this
Right.
card is actually like just good. It's better than Decay and stuff like that. I think this card is completely playable, like especially like in sideboards if you play time.
But would you
Both
play
for,
it
like,
on ladder
Chinese.
if you didn't have attachments?
No,
Yeah.
I don't even know I would play it on ladder even if I did have attachment. Because
I
like if
think
my
it,
opponent
yeah, it
doesn't
kind
play
of runs
removal,
weapons, so it's sort of like, is there a weapon deck with time in it? Like, I know people were experimenting with the,
yeah.
what is it, like time plus Rakano armory
Yeah,
deck?
like Time
So
Armory
maybe,
or
like, it
whatever.
goes into that.
That seems
Yeah.
right, but yeah.
So maybe it goes in there,
Okay.
but
I do
But I
think
mean-
we can speed this up because the card is just good. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
playable, especially in sideboards.
Alright, so
Right,
Trailmaker,
it's just,
I think, is the best card they spoiled this morning. This card seems like a strict upgrade to Amber Acolyte, almost. This card seems insane to me.
Yeah,
Like, it's a
fixing-
Birds of Paradise. Like, you get an influence permanently, you get a power as long as he's out there, and a 2-1 for 2 is not that underrated. This card seems insane.
This card is
It's
good.
yeah,
not sigil,
it's
though.
really good.
Yeah, I think this card
it's gonna
should
be a lot
see tons
happier
of
to play
play.
this in Initiate. It doesn't let you curve into 3s as well, but for decks that don't curve into 3 well, like Praxis, like this is great, right? Like you play it, and now like if you like compared to being on the draw versus Vara's Favor, now you actually make it more awkward. Your opponent might be wanting to make a 3 power play, and now you're either forcing them to use Vara's Favor, you know, or just ignore it and let you ramp to 4.
Yeah, like the card is good. Like gaining influence is powerful. Many of the ramp decks have the issue, bunch of basically colorless mana, and you can't play your cards because you, well, yeah, Heart of the Vault is triple fire, triple time. Yeah.
Also an Explorer, which
Yeah.
is sort of relevant with the Sentinel
Oh,
cards.
it's relevant, and it's even relevant if you want to play like Evelina stuff and try to ramp into dinosaurs. So the card has application, and it's pretty good. Like I think the card is good in general.
Yeah.
So,
Like-
Lunar Magus is our only defensive Nightfall card. If you start at night, you gain 4 health. I think it only sees play, again, as like an anti-night card. I don't think you actually play this card in a Nightfall deck.
Really? No, not in a Lifefall deck, but like I could play that in like sideboard options in maybe Life Force decks where you're trying to stay off some aggro. 2/4 for 3 is not like a completely a travesty of a body.
It's basically
Yeah.
a mono-time Cumbre healer that makes each player draw a card.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
like that's fine, but like the thing is, you have to remember that Cobra Healer is one-time effect, and reoccurring life gain. While life gain is still not like the most relevant form of like advantage, in many cases it doesn't matter. But if you face like rally, gaining 4 per turn, and if you can keep the triggers up, you can just completely like crush them. Like especially like if you look at even like the older decks, like Queen decks, where they basically finish on the hair. Just gaining 4 or gaining 8 just ends the game.
Yeah,
'Cause,
and
like-
I'll... Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like, I mean, I haven't really experimented with Big Cumber at all, but this kind of seems like it could fit into Big Cumber somewhat because, like, Big Cumber has very little card draw before turn 6, and this seems like a pretty good card draw with Cumbre healer-like effect. Of course, you know, you don't give health to another unit, so like you can't have like a, I don't know, 5/9 Titan or anything, but it seems like it has potential into a big Cumbre-like deck.
Yeah, I think the card has application. I think it's mainly an anti-aggro card, and I think it will see play in sideboards at least.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
speaking of sideboard cards, how about Moondial? This thing just
I-
crushes slow decks.
No.
That
Does
seems like a
it
draft
pay
card.
5?
It's pay 5 to draw a card. It seems like a draft card to me, but I don't know Ace.
I think this card is actually like better than it looks. At least like J-Made Tome is a similar card to this that saw play in slower, lower powered formats. But maybe that's not what this is anymore. Maybe it's just too slow.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah,
I think
way
it's too
too
slow.
If the format slows down enough, it could be playable, but I don't going to hit like that speed of games.
Alright, we got a bunch of clunkers in a row here. The next card that looks interesting to me is Lumen Reclaimer.
Really? You're not interested in Fantastic Revelation?
Not particularly, no? Do you have something to say about Fantastic Revelation?
Well, I was looking at it from like Vodacom point of view, where you play Voice of the Speaker.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
for
you just get like
mana?
6 power in your hand and then go off with this?
Like how many times have you played Vodacom where you have like a million lands in?
Yeah,
Like,
I
I'm
mean,
not
but
saying
also
it's-
there's a lot of times you just like want to draw a power because you have none in hand and
Yeah,
you're
that's
missing
fair.
a set
Like I'm
into
not
Vodacom
gonna
in play.
say, like I'm not
I mean,
gonna
it
say
does
like
have
the card is
Nightfall
fantastic,
at the
but
very least. So, but
yeah, like I'm not convinced that card is bad, but I'm not convinced the card is good either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I could see it find a home in those decks where you have like an abundance of lands in hand.
I guess worth mentioning as a potential cog.
Yeah, like I'm
But
not
yeah,
saying
definitely
the
a
card is like
at
broken
best.
or anything. It might
mean,
find a home.
For 4 mana in 2 Voda combo, I'd much rather have 2 findaways.
yeah.
They do very different things though.
You play power, right?
Well, no, this is Tony. What the fuck, man?
So, what do you think of
find a way
Lumen
punches.
Reclaimer? This is a very unique card. Bradykin brought up that you can use it to never deck yourself in the Chalice Mirror, but then if your opponent has that tech too, then the game's literally never ending.
You
Oh
could also
my
just
God.
host graveyard decks, which I think it's the main purpose for the card.
Shuffle your
We don't
opponent's void
have-
in.
Yeah, basically. Like, if I'm playing versus a graveyard deck in time, you don't really have that. The only card that, like, really hosts graveyards right now, like, once they already have it, is Steward of the Past. And this one does a similar thing. Like,
Yeah.
if someone worked hard to put their graveyard into, like, put their deck into their graveyard, and then you just, like, undo their work, they might just lose on that.
Also, one thing that is important to note is it also counters a Dawnwalker that's in the void, right? Like the simple
yeah.
void interaction. You can just steal a Dawnwalker.
Yeah, and it's a 4 mana 4/4, so it's like vanilla stats and a super good, potentially super good effect. This is
I
going
mean,
to
well,
see good
4/4,
sideboard.
I would not say is good stats, right? Because we've had, was it Torgov is a 4 or 5 for 4? I mean, granted, that was Primal and this is Time. But yeah, I think the stats are not good. Like, you really need the effect to be good to play this card.
Like, I do think the card is, like, mediocre at best, like, it's stat line wise. Like, you're not getting a bad deal on 4 mana for 4, but, like, it's not good. Like, you're competing with Titan, you're competing with Marison Disciple, both cards that have better stat lines.
Yeah, but my
So-
point was that, like, for this effect, the fact that it's a 4 mana 4/4, it's pretty impressive.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, like, I do agree with
Very,
that.
very good effect
Hmm.
and usually cards with very, very good effect has very shit bodies, and this is just a vanilla statted 4-drop.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, no,
that's-
okay.
you kind of have to do that in
I-
best of one. Your hosers need to be playable on their own, like Steward.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, the thing is, I say this is a sideboard card because, like,
Yeah.
if Reanimator or, like, any form of graveyard decks becomes, like, a thing, then you just jam this in your sideboard and you're gonna be happy with playing it. In worst case scenarios, it's gonna be, like, a 4 mana 4/4 that's... Yeah, it's fine.
All right,
I think
we
that's-
got a little bit more chaff for a while. Stirring Sand, though. How about this? Time gets a Grasping at Shadows. It only works for Sentinels, but there's some
Yeah,
solid
but, like,
Sentinels to bring back. Like Great Kill Titan.
My problems with this card is, like, how do you get them in your graveyard? Like, if you can play a 1 or 2 off and then, like, play it late game, it's fantastic. But the problem, I see, it's going to be dead for the majority of the game.
It's
So
okay.
it's more like a dark return that can potentially get you 2. That's maybe how you should evaluate it, rather than like a reanimation effect.
Just because it's in a
Yeah,
different
like-
faction than Sporefolk and Herald Song.
Yeah,
Right.
like, it's just hard for me to see, like, how you get a bunch of... Because I don't see any... Like, the only cards I've seen that actually discards in time are the odd Zero Mana Relic and Amaram Shoveler. And even Amaran Shoveler doesn't get rid of Sentinels. You draw them, you discard the other cards. So it's like, that doesn't even work.
And
So I'm not
invoke the
quite
Waystones. But that card is equally unplayable.
Oh please!
Yes,
This is
yes.
the worst card ever printed.
Let's not talk about that. Let's just
Yeah,
move
we'll move on that one.
move
All
on.
right, here's a tough one to evaluate. Where do you think we can fit a 5-cost 6/7 Overwhelm that ramps you by more and more every turn?
I don't know.
I wonder
Maybe
where-
everywhere.
I mean, I think definitely the easiest place to slot this card is into Praxis. Like we were talking about the potential,
Combo.
Praxis ramp deck that wants to go up to 8. I think that Praxis is not only does it generally have more ramp, but it also is just playing more like big dudes than Combre, where Combre has a lot more good synergy cards that they might want to play over this. Now, I mean, this does still synergize with Ironthorn as well as Ascendant, but the question is how many, like 5-drops, are you going to be able to play?
I guess a better question is what time deck does this not go in? Like, it doesn't go in Chalice, and is that it? Does this go in every deck? Every deck that has Titan just also jams this in there?
I don't know. Three time means every tricolor like TJP mid will not have this card.
And
yeah.
don't worry, TJP midrange will play this card. Like, they're insane enough to already play that deck.
I mean, you have Diplo Seal,
ET
it's
will
fine.
play this card in TJP mid. We know that, but
They were saying enough not to play Carnosaur, even though the card is good there, so I'm not going to play this card.
Are you sure about that? I don't know.
But yeah, so what? I mean, Elysian midrange has kind of been dead, but we might get like a Elysian dinosaur deck, and so it would obviously go there.
Yeah, it's a dinosaur.
Praxis, it would go there. I don't know
Yeah.
if it would go into Big Combre or not.
I mean,
think it's better than Ironthorn.
This, guys, this and the 1/1 killer, 1 mana if killer +1/+1. This is insane. These
Kill
two
the
cards.
Sure.
This is insane.
It's like
It's
Carnosaur
powerful.
with Overwhelm.
Yeah, no, like,
Yeah,
it's
and you
powerful.
draw.
And you play a power, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
no,
pretty
like,
good.
It's like that has powerful synergies. Like, I'm just wary of 5-drops that don't do anything when they enter play.
It just blocks everything.
Sure. Like, it's
Doesn't block Jack.
Oh,
Oh
bloody.
no. What
Nothing
have we
blocks
done?
Jack.
Like, it's just the thing is, like, if we've seen 5-drop units in the past, they are kinda mediocre unless they're like Tavrod or... And even then, Koku isn't really played on 5.
So I think that
Or-
Elunex liked this next guy, Sarasar Bull.
Oh yeah, it's neat. Charge is powerful.
Oh yeah. This once again, dinosaurs. Man, dinosaurs will be insane. This is so good.
Yeah,
not
you
so
think
good.
it costs
This is a
I
good
mean,
7.
dinosaur
if dinosaurs are good,
Oh,
yeah.
it's 7. It's expensive as hell, but like, I do think Charge is powerful, and especially in colors that haven't had access to it previously. Also, it has immediate value when you play it,
Yep.
and it triggers the ally, so you kill an enemy attachment at summon, basically.
Yeah, it's like a
The only
Shadow Blast mage, right? That's just like
is
an
that a lot
add-on.
of the times when charge is good is when you're going against like partial, style decks or sweeper decks, and so that's when you don't have a board and you want to, that's where you have your Soulfire Drakes and you're able to, play it, swing in. This one doesn't quite do that.
Oh, no,
That's I
that's
think one notable point of it.
it's completely fair in that sense. Like, it's not a Soulfire Drake, but it does maybe have application if we can hit the dinosaur deck that's willing to play 7-drops, 'Cause
I'm just
just
not a
having-
believer. There's so many good expensive cards. I don't think this passes the bar.
Yeah, that's completely fair. I might just be looking at Charge and think it's powerful. I'm
If
completely...
it was like unconditionally charged, then maybe.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that it's
I
ally,
guess.
I think might push it away.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's fair.
it's still a 7/6, right? Even if it doesn't have charge, it's still a big dude, and I feel like dinosaurs
Mhm.
are gonna be like classic Elysian. Play big dudes. Never think of your plays. Just play big
Because
dudes after
Elysian
another.
is bad.
Like, I'd never play this card if it didn't have Charge. Like, basically, that's how
Oh,
it is.
I don't know, but like I won't cry if I just play a 7/6 for 7.
If you were
I
gonna play a
would.
7-drop, wouldn't you
I
play Talir Unbound?
Oh, tell me,
Yeah,
Telepath Unbound.
so I think let's talk about this card. So this card is interesting in that if you're in a board stall, you can just sort of like slowly end it without drawing any extra cards, right?
Mhm.
She helps
Yeah,
keep the board stall and then gets you past it.
Pass for 7 turns. Take an extra
7
turn.
turns?
I think it only
Nah,
takes
but
4
like
turns to
3.
get there, right?
3 or 4 turns is where you're probably
In
realistically.
general, like it's for if you're playing power, right?
It's like
you
I
put 2
don't.
power in there.
I'm not quite sure how to evaluate this card because like taking an extra turn is, but paying 33 mana for it is
Yeah,
questionable.
so you basically
So
lose
here's
your
the-
turn to take another turn, right? So
Yeah.
we just run the card.
So here's the question: ignore the ultimate for now. Is that ability at all worth anything? Like, what if you just like wait 2 turns and then just like flame blast your opponent for like 16?
Yeah, that's like basically. I think if you can play this card, you should probably just play Flame Blast because it's probably easier to kill people
Man,
with
that's
it.
so greedy. This is the greediest thing, though.
But you're playing Heart of the Vault in this deck, obviously. Like, it's not that greedy.
And like if you don't have one in hand, then you can do things like like if you pass the turn and then you get to like warp a heart and then draw like whatever, and get another one. I don't know. I guess my inclination is that probably this card doesn't make it. Like if we're talking about that big ramp, I don't know if this is the card you want to play in it. I
No,
feel like you want more reactive.
That's true.
cards
It's worse
at
than
that
Great
point in
Kiln
time.
Titan, right?
Right, and this is cheaper, but I'd still rather have that as my top end and then have more Carnosaurs or other things that are, helping me actually like
Control the game.
get more immediate value.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. Like the card is neat and like it looks fun to play with, but I don't think the card is especially good.
So speaking of neat, fun to play with, and does nothing, how about Temporal
Boy.
Distortion?
Oh baby.
There's been so much talk about this card. I don't think it's that great, but a lot of people are really talking it up, so...
Oh no, the card is bad, but it's fantastically bad.
It's so exciting. Like, we're gonna see, like, if there was ever Trollden highlight thing.
Yeah,
like,
who's gonna get on that? Like, that needs to be a thing.
So I would
No,
say at a
XRP,
minimum,
right? That's
at a minimum, this is going to be like maybe like a bad Knucklebones in that no matter what, people are going to play it. Like you're going to face this on ladder, and maybe you'll beat them every time. But this card is seeing play if we word it that way. Now, is the card itself good? At the very minimum, it at least refunds itself. So if you have things to do, then it's good. So the question is, how many decks are going to be able to keep a mostly full hand size once they hit 8 power? Because if you can do that, then that's what's going to be required for this deck to even be possible, much less good.
Yeah, so you're starting your deck with like 4 Channel the Tempest, so like how many 8-drops are you playing in this deck?
I also just want to point out the fact that if anyone happens to play Relic Removal at fast speed, they timed walk your turn 8.
Yeah.
Yeah?
So, like I said, the card is fantastically bad. It's hilarious when it's gonna go off. It's going to go off. And the people playing it don't really care about losing because you kind of consign yourself to losing when you play these cards. And you're gonna have like sick highlight reels.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be fantastic. And it's like just winning 1 out of like 15 games is probably gonna be worth it because like how fucking sick it's gonna be to like play 3 channels after a row, like burn your opponent from nowhere.
We'll have to wait for Bradykin to invent the deck for us and prove us all wrong.
Alright, do we care about any of these expensive time cards?
Do we care about the Colossus, actually?
I don't think any of these are playable. I don't think even... Like, Novaquake Titan is the ceiling of the 4-bet, right? But I don't think it's good.
It's bad.
Like, 16?
It's
just too much.
It costs too much.
Novaquake Titan is bad, but, like, the one I'm looking more as in, like, possibly playable, if you want to play ramp cards, it's the Emerging Colossus. Because Emerging Colossus basically reads, draw Heart of the Vault from your deck and play it for free. Or from your graveyard.
So this card is Great Kiln Titan that has to attack to get value.
Yeah. But
and cost
but the opposite is that he always draws a good card. Like generally, like if you got to 9 and like somehow none of your cards have died, then that's a pretty interesting situation. But otherwise, this is always gonna get you a better card than what Great Kiln Titan is generally gonna do. Whereas he's gonna a lot of the time give you a power or some low drop, whereas this thing's always getting you some big beater.
Like I still like, even though I say that I'm more looking at this card, playing a 9-drop that does not have immediate value.
Immediate impact, yeah. Like we were talking about like 5 drops that don't have immediate value, right?
Yeah,
This thing
like-
costs 9.
It's
this is
expensive
world
as
bearer.
hell. It's expensive as hell. Like, that's just like, we need to preface this. The card is actually very weak to removal in general.
Yep.
It only dodges like Suffocate.
Yeah.
Oh, well, of course, like Fire Burn it dodges, but like that's implied.
So yeah, so probably, yeah, not good.
It's probably not playable, but like if you wanna like argue for like Praxis Ramp, you probably are looking at those cards as your top end.
Yeah.
I'm
Hey,
not-
Xenon, you know, Reanimator with that other card.
Well, the thing is, you can't take Scene and Reanimator with this card really, because if you
Why
read the
not?
card, it's draw a card with 6 or more from your void. So
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, you
so what
Spore
do we
Folk
need
a
to
couple of
This
expensive
and the Heart
guys.
of the Vault.
Yeah, you Spore
Shoots,
Folk
right?
milling Colossus and Heart, then you Stirring Sand your guy back.
Yeah. Sure.
All right, so was
Yeah.
anyone convinced by the event that Valkyrie Spire Guard is a good card? Because if so, I've got a card for you right here, and it's called Roland's Intervention. Give one of your Valkyrie Aegis. It's just Protect that has like other modes.
Wait, where? Oh, there we are.
Roll intervention.
Yeah, it's like just play protect. I don't know. Yeah, but once again, I don't know. Like -3 attack this turn, man.
I mean, the
+1, +1 or
-3, you know, can help you deal, you know, with things like Titan, where like you want to protect, you know, for control decks, but then you go against like Praxis, and they're just like playing big dudes every turn, and you're like, wow, this is not a useful card. With there, like either you use -3, and that way you trade 1 unit. I mean, I guess well, you're trading this card too, right? That's
Yeah,
even
like-
worse now that I say that. Well, I guess it's a 5.
Like
But then
I
you can
think-
just like trade a Valkyrie Enforcer for it anyway. Yeah. Now that I think about it, it's just yeah, it doesn't sound that good.
I think it's basically either you play Protect or you play Finest Star or you don't play this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right,
I mean,
so
we
we can move on to one of my favorite cards, Wanted Poster. This looks to me just
Yeah.
like Justice Wizard of the Elders if you're playing removal pile. I think this card is super good.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's an important distinction, that you have to be playing some kind of removal pile or just some high density of removal. You can't just like put this in, you know, like Rakana where you have like 8 removal spells and maybe a relic weapon. You really want to be having removal being your game plan. And when you do, this is going to be a really good card.
You also have to like remark on the fact that if you're playing versus like a deck like Combray, they can silence off this effect.
Well,
yeah, you have to play it and
I
then
mean-
immediately kill the thing that same turn. I
Yeah,
think.
like you can't let this sit around because eventually they're gonna find a way.
yeah, like no reason where you're just like, oh well, hey, I've got free power. Let's just toss it on there. No, there's no reason to do that. It costs 1, so it's real easy to fit, you know, into with your removal.
Yeah, but I think like if you can reliably trigger this card, it's going to be very strong. And if you can like play something like Come Out of Broader Worlds, and you're able to like consistently hit this, you're going to get card advantage out of it, and it's going to eventually like win you games. I think the
Yeah.
card overall is like pretty strong, and it's like gonna be interesting to see if people can build decks where it takes full advantage of it.
God damn, you stole my comment. I was just gonna say like Elunex, Kamado is gonna be the one that brings this with like every other removal ever
Yeah.
existed, and it's gonna just draw a million
Time
cards.
to
and-
play Unseen Aegis.
Yeah, I think this is like probably top comment of the set. Although the Justice Temple Scribe, Copper Hall Porter, next card over.
Yeah,
gives it a
this
run
is
for its
pretty
money.
interesting.
It's
I think
Entomb though.
I think this card will see a lot of play. Like it's just like a 2/1, it trades or something, and then draws you a sigil. This is what Roland's favor wishes it was.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I disagree. I disagree.
Really?
Because you get the sigil right away with Roland's favor. This is
Yeah, like-
Entomb, right? Like your
That's
opponent
true.
just
Like you're playing against like Fountain Control or something, and like you know you need the power, and then they play, even if they play like a Bloodcaster, and then you attack, and they're like, yeah, sure, I'll take 2.
yeah, exactly. You take 2 and you don't care. So I mean, it's not bad, but I don't see it as a replacement to favor or
Yeah, no, I don't actually like this card in general, because the fact that like if I want to fix or draw card, like draw mana, I want to have it reliably. I don't like when my opponent decides when I get my mana.
Yeah.
Like especially like if this was like a 4/1, you know, like complete like bonkers aggressive stats, then I could see it, because then it's like yeah, they have to kill it. But like in many cases you can drop really low and you're gonna be fine. So I don't actually see it as a problem. I don't like the fact that your opponent controls when they can kill it. If you have sack outlets or ping effects that you're willing to use on this card, then it's completely different. But just on face value, no, I don't want to play it.
I'm certainly gonna try it. I think it'll trade off enough that it'll be good.
But which decks wants that card?
Like Mono Justice?
Oh, okay. Moving on.
Next.
Next one is kind of hard. I guess Tax Collector.
I have no idea what the fuck this card is supposed to do.
It's supposed to double your Molten Fist or your Sword of the Sky King. I don't think it's good, but I don't know. I thought maybe somebody might think it was.
Yeah, so I have a question. So it doubles your character's attack, and so you need to have a weapon.
You need to have a weapon.
Yep,
you need to have a weapon.
Yeah. So this is like wishful thinking at its best, right?
I mean, if nothing else, right? The whole idea is that it, like, if you have some armor, it can double that. But theoretically, you can pay the ultimate and do nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just say that, if you have this in play and you play die on top.
Yeah. For 13, 15. Yeah, exactly. Armory has 15 mana.
No, what I said is that if you have this in play and you play die show, they are going to kill this card before you untap. So it's never going to really do its thing, because you're not hitting the power numbers to play a weapon and then using the ultimate.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you ever play a weapon, they're gonna kill it because it's a 2/3. It dies to basically everything.
All right. So how about a more interesting Chief Justice guy? Well, girl, Stella, the Shot Caller. She's kind of a baller shot caller over here.
Could we go next before we waste time with this card?
I think it's important to talk about her, even if a lot of people don't like her. So I don't like the card. So obviously she would slot into some kind of Rakano Gunslingers, but the issue is that a 2/2 for 3 is not good. Bard was fine because he had evasion. This has no evasion at all. So unless you have a consistent way of giving an evasion, this card is just not going to be good. I think that's pretty much it. Just this card needs evasion so badly. Or otherwise it's going into Argenport Gunslingers. I'm not really seeing that, so I don't like this card.
I think it also sort of suffers from the Navani problem, where it's you want to be aggressive, you're playing cheap units and weapons, so you want to kill them. So +1/+1 in your whole deck, you're gonna kill them before you draw enough cards for that to be worth jumping through hoops for.
It's not your whole deck, it's gunslingers and weapons. So if you play actual good cards, they're not getting.
You don't put this in your deck unless you are playing gunslingers and weapons.
Well, yeah, no, but that's what I said. So you can't play good cards because you have to play these terrible ones.
Jack's a gunslinger.
Well, Milo,
sure,
you play Warhelm, right?
Outlaw.
Wait, is Champion of Glory a gunslinger?
There are gunslingers.
Oh, Champion of Glory is a gunslinger.
There's enough gunslingers that you can play a Rakano Gunslinger deck. It's just even if you are playing literally only gunslingers, weapons and maybe a few tricks, the card still isn't good enough.
You can count on one hand good gunslingers that are playable with this card.
We have Rakano Outlaw, Champion, and is that it?
Well, Jack, if you want to, but that's a 5-drop. So that's now you're entering sketchy territories that you want to play a 2-drop that or 3-drop that buffs your deck. It just doesn't seem that plausible to play.
So I'm shuffling through here. Justice kind of got the short end of the stick. The whole next page looks unplayable to me.
Yeah.
We should talk about Rakano Sheriff because that's probably the best art in the set.
So
what is
this card? If you have another unit in play, it's a 5/5 for 4. If you have another unit with a weapon, but if you don't, this is a 4-power 3/3. 4-cost cards that die to torch without summons or entombs are unplayable.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about Sheriff. I was talking about art, not about that text boxes. Don't.
Wait. Oh. Okay.
No, the card is terrible. Don't play it. The art looks sick though.
Wait. So the cow has. Okay. No, the cow has breasts like a human, which is.
Didn't you read Neon's article today? This is Wyatt Earp giving the weapons to the other people, which makes her more powerful. I don't know. I think the card is really bad.
Yeah, the card's terrible. It's best art though. It's like a cow sheriff. It's fantastic.
All right, so the next one is my favorite guy, Amelie over here. Amelie.
Yeah.
Oh god.
I think this card is insane. It dies to nothing except for hard removal. It has evasion. It makes increasingly larger evasive dudes to go along with it. This card just takes over the game.
So the only thing about it is his ability is pretty slow compared to like some of the other ones. Like if you compare it to
Jack.
World Bearer, getting 1 or 2 power, or yeah, Jack's increasing attack, the Valkyries are not necessarily that relevant. I think the comparison though, like the main deck this would go into is Argenport, right? So the question is, how does this compare to Makto? The main difference is that this dies to annihilate and Makto doesn't, but this also doesn't die to obliterate. So considering that both Visarius and I were running it in our ladder Argenport decks, that I think this would be a easy slot in there. I don't think it's going to be, the like the best. It's not sort of the most snowbally card of the cycle, but it could just be just a good card that you just throw into these decks.
Yeah, my first attempt deck building in set 3 is Valkyrie, like 3 factions, so Fire, Justice, and Shadow. And I played this a bit with Elunex a bit earlier, but I played like, I don't know, maybe 35 games with it as of yet, and I attacked with Amelie exactly once, spawning a 1/1.
Right.
But I still think it's a good card because of just the straight body. Like I would play this card even if it was only saying like flying, and that's it, because this is a super good body, and it saved me some games just because I was able to block with it.
Yeah, right. Because that was the thing, is it wasn't that it got removed every time. It's just sometimes you just kept it back to block.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I'm just not convinced about these 5-card cycle in general, and especially ones where the payoff is reasonably like slow. Like Jack is like 2 attacks and you basically can end the game at that point. And the World Bearer ramp is powerful if you can abuse it, but like otherwise, in general, I'm not too impressed. Like a 4/8 is fine, like it blocks all day, but it's pretty vulnerable to like sure it's a creature so it dies to removal, but like it dies to a bit too much removal.
I mean, Vanquish, Slay, and Annihilate, and you usually want to play this with other big units, right?
Sure, but
So,
like it still is like
said,
permafrost and other stuff.
You play this in the 2-faction Tavrod deck instead of Makto. And then,
Yep.
I mean, the only question is if you still want to play Makto, but this is definitely an easy slot in there. You're not, like, super excited to play it, but it's still good, and, it can often be better in the slot.
Yeah, it's a good, honest card. That's it. Like, it's
not
winning
not
games.
exciting, but it can be good.
Does anybody have opinions on any other card on this page? Any of the expensive Justice cards?
I just like Hammer of Jamoka. It's just neat, not very good.
Hammer of what?
Oh, there's a magic card named Jamoka that has this effect.
It's just to punish everyone who like plays Wisdom on
Everyone who plays.
It's to punish temporal distortion, right? It's the temporal distortion hoser.
It's the
Oh,
temporal
there you
distortion hoser. That's what the card is.
Yep.
But like it's bad.
Let's see. I think that both the legendaries, Crown of Authority and Last Stand at the Gate, are both not good enough.
Oh, they're terrible. They're not worth talking about.
Okay, so Cobalt Waystone. This is actually probably the best Waystone. Just a free Aegis, that's so powerful. Like, Island's Favor is a crazy card.
Like, yeah, that's the thing. That we're back at the thing. It's like, this card is actual value in the terms of Aegis is powerful in most matchups. And, but it comes down to, like, the risk versus playing depleted lands versus non-depleted lands.
Because an interesting point is that we aren't going to get to until the end, but the new crests that allow you to play up to 12 duels, definitely give you an opportunity, cost, in playing the different powers. In that before we saw that, and you would just play Waystones in like Felm, like 2-faction Felm. Yeah, I think that would be totally reasonable. But now, if the choice is, do you either play the crest or this, then you might want to just play the crest.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. Is this a replacement to Island's Favor?
No.
Probably not, because there's still the one thing, which is with the Mulligan rule in Eternal. You want to be playing non-power cards that get you power, so that you have more in your opening hand. And any card that's playing Aylin's Favor is going to be wanting higher power counts in their opening hand. So it also gets you the the Aegis reliably, but it's also just that part.
Yes, basically, if you haven't tried it, try to play 35 power with 4 Seeks or 4 Favors, either or. and see how much you have issues trying to hit like 7 and 8. It's kind of ridiculous how hard it is to hit power drops if you don't play like 8 fetches in general, like 8 to 9 fetches. It's insane. So like, yeah, it's powerful effect you gain Aegis, but like you have a choice now, and I think the Skylands are powerful.
So Primal got a couple of very playable burn spells, I think, in the set. So Snow Pelting is basically just a slow speed deal 2.
Shock.
It's shock. You can scatter shock. You can't fireball somebody. You can't deal 6, 8, 10 to the same target, but you can spread out your pelts. And then Dark Bolt, if you are playing the Nightfall deck, this is just deal 5 for 2, and that's super good.
But the Dark Bolt is at a unit, so it's a bit more restrictive than Snow Pelting.
Yeah.
But
So it's just like the Grenadin one, right? Like it needs to. This is like the unseen version of that Grenadin burn spell.
Right.
Oh yeah. The card is really powerful if you can make a deck where like you can have like Knight with Demand, since 2 mana deal 5 is very strong in general. Like it kills basically all relevant units, like especially for its mana cost. And you can basically 2 for 1 any unit in like a 2/2. So like the card itself is very good.
Yeah, I think both these see a lot of play in their respective tribes and no play elsewhere.
Absolutely. I think both are fantastic. I'm still like uncertain about 1 mana slow speed shock. I think it's powerful, but it feels a bit iffy. But it might be very, very good.
So like the thing with Yetis is you really want to attack with them, right? Because
Oh,
you either
like-
draw cards or you do other things with them, and then this just exhausts your Yetis. Coming back to Snow Pelting, it seems good. Like it's a good 1 mana removal, but I don't know. I'm not super convinced. But then I'm not super convinced of like Yeti Tribal to be a big thing.
Not a Yeti believer.
Nope.
We'll have to see.
But what about Unseen?
How about this next one?
What do you think about Dark
So-
Veil Agent?
So this is interesting. I almost disregarded this at first, but the effect is interesting. So first of all, like just 2/2 for 2 isn't very good, but it summons Nightfall, and so if you have the deck that's full of these synergy effects like the Dark Bolt we just saw, that's good. And then the question is, how often do you think this effect will go off?
I think. Here's
Yeah,
the
the
thing
Aegis
about
effect.
the Aegis effect. It's going to go off whenever it doesn't matter. Since it's like that's basically the truth, though. If you only have like bad or medium unseen cards that you don't really care about, then people are gonna let the Aegis trigger. And if you ever have like a good unseen card like Rindra, they're going to kill Rindra before the Aegis trigger happens.
It's actually a very good
Right.
point. If they have removal, they'll use it before you get Aegis. So if you get Aegis, it means they didn't have removal, so the Aegis doesn't matter.
I mean, it does sort of punish them top decking removal, but yeah, it's sort of hard to see because like it makes this thing maybe hard to remove because it comes down on turn 2.
Yeah, no, but like the Dark
but,
Veil
like,
Agent
the-
itself doesn't give the new unseen card Aegis until you untap.
Right. I mean, it does sort of force people to use their removal like either on this thing or as soon as they can, right? Like otherwise you might say like, well, I'm going to develop, either my power, or I'm going to play a big unit, and then I'll remove it later. It sort of forces you to say, no, I can't wait. I have to remove it now. So that effect might be relevant, but might not be relevant enough to play the card. I don't know. It sort of depends, if you want to be playing a Nightfall deck, and this is sort of just another way to enable it, that might be enough. And then the effect is sort of enough to make it a card, if you were already okay with playing a 2/2 that summons Nightfall.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but, like
like-
if you have
Go
like
ahead.
one other unseen, this effect is insane, right? If you give
Well-
2 Aegises, it's amazing.
But that's not the case, Tony. Like,
Huh?
If
yes,
you're-
your unseen gets Aegis. So like
yeah,
if you
but
have
at your
multiple-
upkeep.
Yes.
So, like, you need to untap with the new card that you played. And if it's another 2/2, then they're gonna let it pass and they're gonna block it with any unit in the game and trade. And if it's a card that has a relevant stat line, they're going to kill it before you untap. Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
it's
but it's
not-
still-
you
it's
don't
still
get
not better, right?
Aegis directly.
I mean, I don't know like in what finished product would that card be in, right? probably any Nightfall deck because it's a cheap way to summon Nightfall.
Like,
But,
you play this
like,
in a Nightfall deck. That's how I see it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. But I feel like the Aegis, Unseen Get Aegis thing might be a big deal later on. Because, not a super big deal, but it's a good text to have.
It's just like bonus text. It's not costing you anything on rate, really.
And you can gain a lot of value if you have
It
another
depends whether you
Unseen.
want to play a 2/2 that doesn't have any evasion or extra stats or that.
Alright,
So
so
it's just the fact that it's below.
But yeah,
rate.
let's move
my
on.
next
I think
card is a
talk
Fearless
about it
Yeti. So it's a 3/1 overwhelm for 2. So it's basically always gonna die whenever it attacks. But on its way out, it gets the Scout, and it's just a Yeti. Like I think if the Yeti tribe is a deck, it plays this guy.
Yeah, maybe. Like, aggressively statted. It's what they want.
Although maybe it doesn't play it,
I
and
mean,
instead
sort of
plays
like-
Iceberg
like would
Mason.
you like I'm thinking like if you're playing I mean so basically you really need to be playing like Skycrag Yeti to want to be playing this over Rakano Outlaw, right? Because Rakano Outlaw I think is generally going to be better. Like how often is the Scout going to be better than not dying, you know,
And also
when it
Champion.
attacks?
Like Champion is way better than this card, right?
Yeah, but you need
What
like
is?
12 2-drops, right? So you play like Champion,
Yeah.
Fearless Yeti, and Iceberg Mason.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, if you're looking to play aggro, you need redundancy. And if you can push cards to the top of your deck, that's good.
Yeah, the Iceberg Mason is an interesting, like digital only effect, right? Just like slightly accelerates
Yeah.
the rate at which you draw your Yetis. Like you don't want to play if you're power screwed, but if late game it's super good.
Like, if you get to draw multiple ones, you can basically guarantee you will always draw red.
But here's an interesting thing. Like late game, what if you're playing this in Skycrag and you have like obliterates and torches that are your out? Like now, do you like not want to play this card?
Pretty much, probably.
Yeah, that's a
That's a
good
lot of
point.
ifs.
I think the card in general is going to be very good, though. I think that
Like,
when you're
yeah,
drawing
I
to
think-
burn will not be that common.
Right. So I think you're gonna want to be going more all in on like winning through the Yeti cards, and if that case, then yeah, this might be. I mean, it still is only like a 2/3, so it's sort of like how good is the summon effect? Yeah, I don't know.
All right, so
I mean, you're never gonna you're somewhat gonna notice it, right? Because you're gonna be, oh, I drew this Yeti, I could have drawn something else this turn instead, and it's like, it's weird to evaluate if it was worth it or not.
It's going to be very hard to evaluate how good that card
Yeah.
actually is. Since, yeah, you're
Right.
gonna have...
so here's a card that's
It's
not
fine.
hard to evaluate. It's Strategize.
Exactly.
I've
So,
talked about
yeah,
this
best
card a
in the
lot.
set,
Yeah.
move on.
Yeah,
Best card in the
Yeah.
set.
it's the best card, right?
Fantastic.
Yeah, this card is great.
All right. So what about Unseal? Sorry, actually was
Unseal?
talking this morning about, not this morning, this afternoon, I guess, right after it came out, how this was insane for him in film tempo.
I believe it. I really like the card. You know, it's sort of like Backlash, but now if people are playing more Permafrost, because we have all these 5-drop cards, right? And what's one notable thing about them is that they all, you know, get hosed by Permafrost. So if we start seeing more Permafrost, then this is going to be better. I don't know if there's going to be any other curses that are going around, but in addition to just being a, you know, a counterspell, I think that might be enough for this card to see play.
So what about
I mean,
Winter's
Backlash shall
Grasp?
play, so yes, this card will see
Like-
play, sure.
Do you think we want bad Permafrost in our Nightfall decks? Just a
No.
combo with
The
Mirrors?
reason, like, there's
I
also,
don't think
like,
so.
another thing about playing Unseal is the fact you can play it in sideboard in, like, Falcon Control, and suddenly you have a way to, like, run curse removal.
Actually, I
Gift.
would play the Shadow counter spell. We'll get to that card, but I think in Felon Control you would much rather have the other one than Unseal.
You can't do that on.
You can't do that.
So.
That doesn't count
Huh?
a gift, right?
Yeah, and also
You can't respond to gift. Or no, you can't respond to gift, but you can't. Well, anyway, we'll talk
It's
about it
not
when we get to the
targeted.
card.
Alright.
So
anyways.
anyway, Winter's Grasp is bad. So
All right, so
Yeah.
how about Daring Pioneer? I think this card is actually very good.
This
I
is
think
pretty
it's better than
good.
False Prince because it negates the spell. Like, how often are they holding Seek Power?
like,
Yeah,
the thing
well-
is...
yeah, but
Well,
even if it
I
does,
mean,
like
you're-
you stole their power, right? Like yeah, maybe you didn't want to lose your drop for it, but it is still somewhat significant that you know when you borrows favor the False Prince, like it's important. Like the point is like you lost no cards in dealing with it. Like you got your Shadow Sigil, but you don't get your Shadow Sigil if you try and play it on this. It dies, but you know you don't get your power.
Sure, like, at some point in it, this card is going to be, like, fantastic. and other parts of the game it's going to be completely like garbage.
Yeah,
like, I think this card is like way better if you play ladder early, but in tournaments when you have open deck lists and you see like a 4-off Daring Pioneer in their main deck, you're going to hold Seeks and Favors and stuff.
I mean, that's assuming like you can, right?
need...
Like, sure, if you have like a power heavy hand and a Seek, you'll be like, yeah, I'll hold on to it and then I'll trade it as a removal spell. What happens if you have like your control deck? You have 2 power and like a Seek power, right? Are you gonna just like not play your Seek power?
Like obviously
well,
not.
You're gonna play your Seek power on turn 3, and
yeah,
like if you're on the play on the draw, you're gonna be fine.
But the other thing you can do with this card is like, say you're playing against a Harsh Roll deck, right? You go into their turn 5 and then you drop this card.
Yep.
And so now they're forced to deal with it. And so if they have a fast spell, that's obviously the best thing. But now they can't just Harsh Roll, right? Because obviously when you're developing into a board, the worst thing that happens is Harsh Roll. But this one says, no, you need to remove this and Harsh Roll, or you need to do something completely different. And so that's a pretty interesting thing in that it both advances your board while also protecting it.
My problem with that card is that I know the argument like, oh, Dice to Torch is, you know, the most common argument, but let's say, I'm gonna just state the worst case scenario. You have 2 Daring Pioneers and a 3 health minion. I play Torch, I kill 3 units. Like, sure. Multiple Pioneers.
It does counter the Torch. You only kill 2 units.
You kill 2.
Wait? Oh, no, you're right. Okay, yeah, but still, like, it's still good.
Yeah, it's really bad in multiples, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, the problem is that, like, it's an aggressively statted card, so you want to play more than 1 in your deck because you want to draw it.
Right.
And if you ever play multiple, you're opening yourself up to get extremely blown out by, like, any random card. Like, any random spell in that sense. And, like, Unearthly said, you can hold it until turn 4 when they go into Harsh Rule. But you need to have a pretty good hand to not play your most aggressively statted 3-drop to go into, like, a Harsh Rule turn. And they basically need to not play cards until this point. So it's really hard to say that a card is good because, like, you can technically negate Harsh Rule, but you need to put pressure enough to, like, warrant the Harsh Rule. Right. And if you're holding back some of your better cards, you're not gonna force the Harsh Rule out.
But this might let you play more units instead of Disruption, right? Like, at least, like, if you say you wanted to play this instead of the 2-power negate that we just looked at, that, you know, the idea would be that, like, you already have your curve and then you have this on top of it, right? And so then it can serve as either a redundancy for units, or it can serve as redundancy, you know, for disruption effects.
Yeah, that's fair. Like, you can look at that and then it gets better. But
I just think this card just obviously goes in any aggressive Primal deck. I don't know what else there's to say.
Probably.
No,
I think we've said a lot. So let's move on.
Yeah.
Alright, so here's a weird one that I'm not quite sure how to evaluate. Sunken Tower. It's 3 clones, and then it self-crystallizes you next turn. It's just a bizarre card.
So it does pay 5, and so
yeah,
it's
you
bad.
can't activate it on the next turn you play it, basically, if you play it on curve.
Yeah. You have to preset it up. But then it can clone 3 things, which is great. But then after the 3rd time, everything gets stunned, which means your opponent's units are going to get the first attack while all your guys are still stunned 2 turns from now.
Oh, wow. It's
stunned all units? I thought it was crystallized.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I'm not sure what's going on here. Like, it's super powerful if you have units with summon effects, but I don't know. Do you think it's good?
No, I thought it was a crystallize, and even then I was skeptical because still a huge investment.
Did you spend, what, 18 to get a crystallize? Yeah.
Well, it crystallizes yourself.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, we were saying if it was actually crystallized instead of it being actually crystallizing everybody. So yeah, not a good card.
I mean, the point of crystallize is the surprise factor. Telling your opponent, in 3 turns I'm gonna crystallize, buddy. That's, yeah.
No,
well, the point of this is to make clones, not to stun things.
Yeah, I understand what's
Tony, like, that's just not the case. It says once per turn, so you don't have to activate this ability. So you can set it up at 2, and then you can just wait for the last one to trigger. Yeah. But, like, due to the fact it stuns all, it's just significantly worse. Another card I'm kind of surprised you skipped over was Nocturnal Observer, since we were talking about the Nightfall deck. Having free, literally, tap to loot is pretty okay in if you can continuously hit Nightfall.
I actually haven't played with the set. Like we started like as soon as I got home from work. Does it become night right away? Can you play this and then immediately loot?
Yes.
All right, that is substantially more powerful than I thought. Then.
But so what sort of deck do you want this in?
Well,
you want a reanimator.
Trigger. Yeah, basically, where you can discard stuff and you can take advantage of your graveyard.
It's like
That's what you're looking to do.
It's a looter that you can use immediately that also draws you an extra card.
Yeah, pretty much.
What, Blind Seer?
If you have more ways of extending the night, she can loot again.
Yeah, and it's a free loot in the sense that like Blind Storyteller is a 1, so it's going to die much easier to like random ping effects.
Yeah.
And it costs you mana to use.
Yeah, this seems better than Blind Storyteller, and I've played Blind Storyteller.
I think it's pretty good. Like especially if you can just continuously keep night going, it's free loot.
Right, and if you consider that combo decks would be some of the decks that can take advantage of Nightfall, you know, that that turning the symmetry asymmetrical, that I would think that you'd be okay giving your opponent cards if you get them to.
Yeah, if you do more busted stuff with cards, then you definitely do want to do these things. If your opponent doesn't take advantage of Nightfall, this is just straight up better for you than your opponent.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think this card is solid, actually, now that I realize Nightfall turns on immediately. So you get 2 loots out of it, even in the absence of other cards.
Pretty much. Like, you can draw 2 cards out of the loot effect.
Yeti Furflinger is another playable-looking Nightfall card. So it's super heavy into Primal, which is definitely a large drawback, but it's a Yeti with Nightfall, so it goes into a couple different spots there, and it also has an ultimate for removal. Like, it casts a Cersos Meddling, which is, of course, unplayable, but when you stick it on a card, it's playable on its own.
Well, I mean, Cersos Meddling is fast, right? Like, that's the reason why that card is, like, okay. This is slow, but sort of like, is a 3/3 Yeti with Nightfall going to be good enough? And maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't really know how the Yeti deck is going to play out. It's not something I'm particularly interested in, and we'll have to just see what cards go into that deck to make it good.
I think it's really hard to evaluate all the tribal decks currently, since there are going to be definitely better and worse builds.
And Yeti's a tough one, right? Like, Granadin is pretty obvious what's going on, and like Unseen, like Felm is like pretty obvious what's going on, but like Yetis, like, how do you build that? Are you super aggro? Are you more mid-rangey? Are you going big with like the expensive Yetis?
Like, how many colors are you playing?
Yetis, right? Yetis are super aggressive.
Are you playing Scouting Party? That's like the best Yeti, and that card's expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree that Champion is the best Yeti, but yeah.
Probably Fury is better. It's faster, deals more damage. Scary.
Alright, so what's our next relevant card here?
Is Clutchmate good?
No.
Yes or no? No? Yeah.
No. Definitely not.
Yeah, no. I agree. I said yes, but yes in agreement, not yes.
I think Thudrock is also pretty bad.
Yeah, like Thudrock is expensive, and it has the clause that it has to hit things, and that makes it...
have overwhelm, yeah.
Even in the Yeti deck, I don't think that's playable. However, there's a different expensive 3 health unit, Jotun Feastcaller. I wrote about this guy a ton, so I mean, my views are known. I think this card's great. What do you guys think?
I'm really not excited to play 5-mana 4/3. Like, we have cards that are like 2-drops that kill this in combat. Like, that's like scary to me to think about. So if I'm playing a 5-mana 4/3, and I'm looking at our current meta, like before going into the set, like Rally and aggro decks are rampant. I don't think you can afford to play a 5-mana 4/3. Like, this can't actually like even block like a Rally turn.
Well, yeah, but
super scary to like play.
Is Rally still gonna be like tier 1?
Well,
we don't know that.
We don't know that, but what I'm saying is, like, looking at the meta going into, like, the decks that we're playing, you need to block with your 5-drop.
Well, the thing is, I don't think you play this in your 5-drop slot. I think you play this instead of something like Staff of Stories or Channel the Tempest or Knucklebones. Like, this is your like finish the game up slot.
So, like, I do agree with that set, but like, you're still playing the card in your deck, so you can't say that, like, yes, this is an 8-drop when you're not effective. Like, are you removing those cards from your deck completely, or you're saying this is my new finisher?
I think you do. I think you build around this guy. You build around him as how you're going to win every game.
Okay, that's way more fair to say then. That's like, I viewed it as trying to play this card as early as possible and try to. And then I do think it becomes more viable if you're willing to play it like on turn 7 and 8, and just have it sitting rotting in your hand. Because that's what I
mean, like, Champion of Cunning can do that too, right? Like
But
when you don't have
champion-
his Primal activated?
Sure, but Champion of Cunning on baseline is a 5/5, so it's way more robust in actually blocking units in
I mean,
aggressive
how
formats.
often do you play Champion of Cunning as a 5/5 and it survives?
Never.
Like,
Against
that's
Rally, which
just
is the argument he's
different.
making.
Yeah, like I'm
I mean,
saying versus
yeah.
aggro decks, like it actually blocks rally decks. If I'm playing versus an aggro deck, I don't really like having my win con die to like a 1/1 with a rally on it. Like I do understand like drawing 1 card and 2 cards and 3 cards is very, very powerful. But I just like see this card dying before it actually does anything. Because it can't attack profitably into basically any cards in play in standard. Or in well, standard is
Whatever.
So I've always thought that JPS is kind of like a nonsense pairing for a control deck. Like, you're giving up Withering Witch to get Harsh Rule, which makes your Lightning Storms bad, and you give up your best win con, Champion of Cunning, which has never made sense to me. This kind of gives me a reason in my mind to build JPS. Like, you get infinite spot removal because that makes Jotun Feast Caller like the best card in your deck.
Okay, and like that's still sketchy because it's triple primal.
But you only need single Shadow and single. Well, maybe, I guess maybe you're playing Double Justice for Harsh Rule, but like.
Yeah, exactly.
Double
And
Justice.
you want like, don't you want Double Shadow for things like Macto? Oh,
I mean,
don't want
this
No, the
that
point
influence
is
is still way
Macto.
easier than Armory's influence.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
but like
but
Macto is one of the reasons why JPS has been bad, because the card doesn't make any sense for the deck. And so you put it in there, and then your deck's win rate just goes down. So if you aren't forcing yourself to play some sort of weird win con, you'll be a lot better off. Whereas this could actually be one.
All right, so what else is worth talking about here? I think Lido Most Skilled is worth mentioning just for having the worst name in the set.
yeah,
Most
5 and a
Skilled?
4/5 with conditional killer. I'd rather not touch that.
Most Skilled? What?
I mean, I'd like to see like some kind of Photoshop with the face of a player that heavily misplays. And, I'd like that. But
So what
I
you're
mean,
saying
I
is you
think-
want your face on
Typical
Lido.
rally player.
I never misplay, man. Don't you watch Team League and stuff? I never do that.
Oh yeah. So, like an actual card, I don't. No, that's not an actual card. I was gonna say Frost Rider, but it seems more like a draft bomb than a constructed playable card.
Yeah, I think the next card that's pushed for constructed that comes along the list is actually 2 pages ahead.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And that is Dream Snatcher, the 2-cost 2/3 lifesteal.
Oh yeah, that card looks so good.
This card looks ridiculous. So like a 2-cost 2/3 lifesteal is like a very solid anti-aggro blocker. Like, yes, it dies to Torch, but like it's a 2-drop, so whatever.
It's 2-drop,
And then
yeah.
this ultimate is gonna on average give you +10/+0. Like, you just get to kill them in 2 hits.
Oh, but like that's not even like the best part about this. It's the fact that it profitably blocks almost every single 1 and 2-drop we have in the game. It's only
Okay, but-
Instigator and Glory that it like straight up loses to. So,
Right.
like,
And Mirrors
it's fantastic.
sometimes.
Well, Mirrors needs conditional to have an activation, but like, on average, or like the baseline of Mirrors is going to trade with it, so that's fine even then.
Right,
And,
like you're happy to trade with mirrors.
yeah, like if Mirrors is just going to be a 3/2, you kill it before it becomes a 4/3. And yeah, you're like, sure, it sucks if you're on the draw and they play Permafrost and then smack you for 4. It makes you feel sad. But the card is still good for that, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it has 2 Shadow though. 2 Shadow on turn 2 is very hard to do. Well, not very hard, but
Yeah.
it's somewhat hard to.
No,
Yeah,
no, like, it's
one thing you
absolutely
learned from the
not-
event is trying to play, what is it, the Spear Guide on turn 2. Like, it's not always that easy.
Yeah,
I'm
you
just
want
gonna
to
say the
stick to
Ventex-
2 faction, I think, if you're
Yeah,
playing
like you're
these
not
heavy
playing
aggro
2
cards.
faction, that's for sure. You're playing 2 faction.
So you play this in like Big Xenon maybe, something like that.
Fel control.
You think,
I mean,
would you
obviously
play
you
this in
this in
Fel?
Light Force, right?
I'd play this in Fel. Like if the meta is
Really?
if the meta is fast enough to me to actually care about my life total enough, I have no problem playing a 2/3. It might not be main deckable on like ladder in general, but if we have really quick decks, I don't mind playing a 2/3 with lifesteal. It's fine enough to play.
Yeah.
I don't think you're like ever gonna ultimate this though.
Oh, and you don't need to ultimate it to like have an early game blocker.
Dude, you
Yeah,
ultimate on
like,
turn
that's it,
12
that
just to
is
mill him
their
for
early
15.
game blocker.
Oh yeah, definitely. OP, the Chalice counter.
Yeah, you play it. It's
Deck 'em.
it goes over the top in the mirror. Pay 12, mill 15. That's a card.
Like the thing is, the card is like fine. 2/3 lifesteal for 2 is powerful enough.
Yeah.
Double
This is
Shadow
workable.
makes it.
This is Bartolo, a very good statted minion, but a shit ultimate that like we're never gonna activate.
I'm gonna say this.
But it's there.
This ultimate is way more relevant than Bartholo's ultimate because you can actually play it in the decks that are willing to play this card.
Well, I mean, the main important thing is that it actually affects the board when you play it, whereas Bartholo's just pay 7, do nothing.
Oh yeah, like you get a 12-3. It's like gonna fucking punch your face in.
But yeah, I think that's good for that card.
Yeah, like I think the card is fine.
Yeah, so does anyone have anything to say about Mirror's Nightshade besides obvious top 5 card in the set? Sees tons of play, is great.
Card's
really
broken,
good.
and if you really hate losing games on ladder, make sure your opponent has a protect and then ultimate, because your game crashes.
So there's gonna be a hotfix coming this weekend, is what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much.
So what is it? If you activate the ultimate when your opponent has an Aegis, you both lose?
Yeah, your game just shuts down. Like you don't lose any points.
Or only you?
Both players.
Oh, well then you can just match fix, right?
Wait, so does the client crash? Or
No, the client is fine.
You just get
the
kicked out of the
just
game.
goes like,
Oh, so
like,
you have the server.
yeah, the game server like basically dies on you, so you both get the game doesn't get recorded and you don't lose any points.
Alright.
Okay, so you played this in JPS actually with Protect. And whenever you're about to lose because you're playing JPS, just do that.
protect your opponent's face for the draw?
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't do that.
Time
That's
waster.
hate for playing JPS.
You get to meme the hell out of them.
Yeah, that's right.
Alright, so
let's-
I think
let's move
Sleeping
back.
Draught is the first blink spell we've gotten, right?
Oh yeah, I actually like that card.
This seems
I'm
super
not sure
sweet.
how-
Anything with an Entomb, with a summon, if you just trade in combat, this card seems really
like-
good. It's like the
yeah,
Shadow
I'm-
Protect.
Yeah, it's pretty strong in general as well, especially like if you look at the new cards we've gotten in 3 with like Nightfall triggers. If your opponent harsh rules and you have 2 mana open, you get to trigger Nightfall and you get to draw the card on your.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, yeah.
And in general, like you can bring back very powerful units, since it's unconditional. It just has to die this turn in that sense. It's not Dark Return, so you're not gonna always want to play this card, but
And it does
Has an
cost 2.
application.
That's one important thing to note, is that like sometimes it can even
absolutely.
be hard to hold up Protect. Holding up a 2-cost one, is really hard.
I've heard
But-
people say that you want to play this in sacrifice decks, which I could see, because it's put it into play again, so it's very powerful in that sense.
I see, yeah. If you are the one that you can plan around like destroying your unit, then bringing it back, I can see that being really good. That's a good point.
Yeah, I like that's a good point that it is hard to hold up sometimes, but I just like cards like this that are tricky and difficult to play optimally. This is a hard card to play, and I like
yeah,
that.
it can do really broken things.
Yeah, like we're gonna see a master deck build, not like some kind of deck builder, like use this card in a very broken way for sure. This has potential.
Yeah. It's not immediately like obviously powerful, but someone will break, I think.
Yeah, when we're gonna see on the top of Reddit very soon.
So, do you think Ashara Ruthless Assassin is playable? I think this card is a solid rate. Like a 3/3 deadly for 3 is good, and then you can sack a little doofus to get a 7/3 like must jump block attack basically.
Yeah, so the only interesting thing is how often is her ability a downside? Because sometimes you might just want the 3/3 deadly, and like what happens if you have this and a Champion of Chaos, right? You kind of don't want to attack with both of them, and so that's where it's kind of a downside. But otherwise, like on her own, her rate is good. So it's sort of like, can you always attack either alone or with like 2 other units, or do you have like a unit you're okay with sacking? It's another one of those, like you were saying, tricky cards to play with. That'll be interesting to see how like it plays. But I think that is going to be an important point with this card.
Stone Scar mid range, guys.
Yeah, it's also interesting because like it is a deadly unit, so it kind of promotes board stalls. Like your opponent has a good unit, they don't want to attack into it, and then it's good at breaking board stalls. Like it just lets you sack some little garbage unit to get in a bunch of damage or kill an opponent's unit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I'm not quite sure where to put this on like how good the card is. Since 3/3 deadly for 3 is like okay, that's not like terrible, it's fine. And pushing 7 damage potentially is powerful as well, since it's always winning combat outside,
Right.
like if you don't have outside influence.
Yeah, I think this card's gonna see a bunch of play.
Yeah, she is also a gunslinger, and while I'm not quite sold on Rakano gunslingers yet, Stone Scar has a lot of good gunslingers and gunslinger payoffs. So that could definitely be a deck, and she could be a part of it.
Why
Yeah.
are you skipping the fact that she's an elf? Isn't that relevant?
There's no elf.
No, we don't have Elf Tribal yet. Set 4 though.
So
Yes.
Set 4 rating.
I saw some people talk about Prickly Graded. I think it's really bad. A 1/2 for 3 just isn't worth getting. It's like it's not a 2 for 1 because the 1/2 body doesn't matter.
Oh, the card is bad.
Yeah.
Also, we missed the card. I briefly talked about Corrupt. The
I don't
Oh.
think that card is worth
Corrupt.
So
talking
it
about.
says
To be
steal an
perfectly
enemy
honest.
spell. So talking about gift, it does not counter gift.
And also, like, the spell you steal needs to have legal targets. So if they play Vanquish and they don't have that targets, you can't steal it. If, like, so basically the cards that are guaranteed are burn spells. 'Cause
Channel
they
Tempest.
always. Yeah, but like, let's be real here.
The ultimate.
Dude,
blowout.
Channel. You steal Channel Tempest. Your opponent pays 8, so you draw 3 cards and you deal damage. Like,
Sure.
So you had this card in your hand for how long?
Like, and you lost the game because you had like a dead draw for like 7 turns. But like, Corrupt is just not like good enough to play because of how situational it is.
Who was
like,
talking about the highlight reel moments earlier? This is going to be
Yeah.
big highlight reel moments for sure when you steal a kill.
Sure, but like the highlight real moments are in general bad.
yeah, but same with Obliterate, right? Obliterate is a card that sees some good amount of play, and
So,
Corrupt
like-
is just.
Yeah, sure, but
Yeah.
like, no, like I say that the burn spells are unconditionally good. Like you can. Are you willing to play a card in the chance that you might play a deck running Obliterate?
Oh, I mean, as a sideboard card, because
Yeah.
you know our argument was you liked the blue counterspell better than Corrupt, and my argument is that I feel like Corrupt as a sideboard card in Fel is better than the other one.
But you can't counter
It
gift.
depends on
no.
your sideboard slots.
Everything's
like,
about
this is
gift.
obviously going to be better in some
Unseen,
matchups.
Unseen deals with relics and curses and attachments in that sense, so you can remove gift from yourself, which this cannot do.
Wait, you can't
It
remove
actually
it. You can
gives-
counter it. Only when they play it.
Have I
What does
misread
it do
Unseen?
Yeah, or unseal.
Because I thought it said negate and any spell or curse, and I thought it meant you could. Oh, okay, then maybe I missed incorrect.
I
thought it
think
was,
that only
like,
that only
basically
counters it
remove-
when they play it.
Yeah, no, then it's fair. Like I did actually misunderstand the card. Did think it was like a removal for the curse, but it's not.
Yeah, and also you're like playing Sabotage and Fel Control in sideboard anyway, right? So, I don't know. I feel like
Sure.
Sabotage and Corrupt in the same anti-control part of your sideboard will be very good. And Corrupt is also very good versus aggro, like versus Obliterate types aggro. So
Sure. I definitely think it could serve well as a sideboard card. I don't really like it for ladder. I think there's going to be too many times when
Oh no.
you're not going to.
Oh, its ladder is terrible.
No, it's trash for ladder for sure. But I mean, I wanted to talk about this card because my argument when we're talking about the blue counter spell is that I felt like Corrupt was a better sideboard card than Fel.
So yeah, I feel
still
like the
think
only
it is,
thing
though.
about Corrupt as a sideboard card is whether or not it is too narrow, and that you have other cards that fulfill the similar purpose but worse, but are more general purpose, and so you just have a broader sideboard. But I think that's going to be the point with this card.
Yeah, basically that's what like Unseal does. It's universal when it comes to spells.
Yeah, so,
So
like
you don't have
Unseal
to
is a slight upgrade to Backlash. Deadly Confrontation is a slight upgrade to Deathstrike. Right? We kill an enemy unit, and then if we're playing an Unseen deck, we can just machine gun down some more guys.
Yeah, no.
No, you're not seeing it.
Like the fact that you're playing triple shadow on this card itself. And,
Oh, I
like,
did not notice that actually. That's a good point.
So like killing a unit for 4 is a okay rate. At slow speed it's like slightly worse. It's like worse dash track in that sense. And paying 6 and tapping your own unit to kill an additional enemy, like sure, that's like a good rate to kill an enemy for tapping and paying 2 mana, but that's 6 available mana, and you're also like shutting down your own unit, so any form of semblance of board advantage you would get also gets like diminished with the fact that you're exhausting your own creatures.
So I'm kind of okay with cards. Like if this costed just like a little less, I'd be perfectly okay with sacrificing tempo for value in this case. That killing units is like worth sacrificing some tempo for. The problem is that 6 power to do it is just a little too much.
Like, it might be good, but like I currently don't see it because of the influence requirements and how it's slow speed.
Like, you're gonna need to have a really grindy Unseen deck, I think, in order for this to be good.
Yeah.
And so far, Unseen seem like that's not the direction they want to go.
They seem to be wanting to be up tempo and killing your opponent, in my opinion.
Yeah, they want to be aggressive Nightfall.
Like I said, I might read the game completely wrong, but I don't think I'm that off basis.
So about the next two 4-cost cards, like I think that both Devastating Setback and Devious Drone are like almost there, but not quite good enough.
No, I
don't understand why you would ever play Devious Drone. Oh, I guess it's a Grenadine actually.
Yeah, it's a Grenadine. It combos with stuff like Sleeping Draught, like that sort of thing.
Sure, but like
you can Hunting Scream it, right?
Yeah, you can Hunting Scream it, absolutely. But the problem is you're still exposing your removal spell to like getting fucked with. Yeah. If you like are looking to like kill a unit on 4 and you play this and they go Desert Marshal or Valkyrie,
you're very
whatever,
sad.
and,
yeah.
And it's like I played a 4-mana 1/1. Like I basically lost the game on turn 4, and that's probably never gonna be okay to play. If you could do some like reanimator stuff with it, maybe, but like on face value, I think the card is not playable.
Yeah.
The problem with like Devastating Setback in general is that it says the enemy player discards a spell or attachment. Oh, okay, never mind. I missed that of your choice.
Yeah, it's either Sabotage or Devil Plague.
But the Sabotage for 4 is...
Yeah, both those effects are overcosted for sure.
Yeah, it's too expensive to play. I thought it actually was... We had another discard card, like the Prickling Grenadine, and I thought it was the same kind of thing, so they choose to discard, and then it's just terrible.
Alright, so how about the probably strictly better Oblivion Spike we got? Headman's Axe. Did anybody play like Finkel's Stone Scar Sack deck last month?
No.
So I think, yeah, maybe we don't have the expertise to evaluate it, but on its head, it's better than Oblivion Spike, so, hey.
Yeah, like Spike was pretty solid in that deck. You'd often play it as like a 9/5, and like in the same situation, this would be a 9/9, and that's some serious power we're talking about.
Yeah, and it is a continuous effect. So if you continue to fill your void, it gets bigger.
So if someone plays...
Yeah.
So is it better than, what's it called? Void Spike, or...?
Yeah, I think it's
better than
I think it's definitely better.
The relic weapon. Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, sorry, wait, this is a weapon?
Oh, it's a weapon? Never mind.
Oh, wow, this is a... Okay, I just assumed it was a relic weapon.
Yeah, everyone was talking about how this is better than Oblivion Spike. Alright, well, I don't like this weapon.
Yeah.
I guess that deck doesn't play an Overwhelm unit, so... Yeah, so no go. Alright, what about the Shadow Diesel? I think this one is the only one that isn't going to see play.
Diesel. Oh, are we
No, I don't like it. Like, it's got lifesteal, which is good against aggro, but against anything else it's not that good. It dies to Runehammer, and its ability, you know, it needs at least 2 to do anything relevant.
Yeah,
so it's sort of like you put this in Life Force, and even then it's still a slow activator, so I don't like the card.
No, I think it's too weak. I think the stat line isn't really that good. Lifesteal isn't that relevant of a keyword in most cases, and I said the ping effect to like ramp up from 1 is very, very slow, and having relevant targets at 1 except face is pretty minor.
So this card actually brings up another point that I think Tony is the best person to talk about. So Auric Runehammer is sort of indirectly nerfed by Nightfall, dealing 1 damage at the start of your turn. Like even if you Auric Runehammer on an empty board and kill something, you're not guaranteed to get your 2/4 if they play a Nightfall card. So how do you feel about Auric Runehammer in the Dusk Road metagame?
I feel like Reckoner Artisans just got a buff. Well, not a buff, but like it's much more needed now than it was a bit early on. Like I feel like the Kamato style deck of it's not armory but kind of armory will be much worse because of the Nightfall, and it's, I mean, at worst you still go 1/1, which isn't bad, but you really want to use this card to go 2/1. And yeah, if it's a 5/2, then you're a bit more fine. So I mean, to be fair, Runehammer is bonkers. It was like an insane card in the late stages of set 2, and even before that. Like, I'm not unhappy that this card got somewhat nerfed by this mechanic. It's okay, but yeah, Artisan is kind of counters the counter.
Right, but that's important in that, you know, Kamado's deck is not armory. Like, it's not armory at all. It just treats Orb Runehammer as just a 4/1, you know, removal spell that can potentially get you a 2/1. And it does, you know, work against that deck and that usage. And so it might help, you know, give decks more leverage against that deck.
Yeah, but my point is like, you know, in Kamado's deck, he really wanted to use Runehammer as a 2/1. Right? Like, anything other than a 2/1 is a failure for that card. In Kamado's mind, because Kamado is all about removing everything. I feel like
and he didn't have like stash or card draw. So if you didn't 2/1, then you're starting to dangerously fall away from being able to remove everything. So
exactly. So if
it may
you're
affect
unable to
the viability of that deck, but we'll have to see how much Nightfall is actually in the metagame.
Yeah. So here's kind of a weird off-the-wall card. Stone Scar Scrapper. So it's a 4/6 for 5, which is like a very solid stat line. Like 6 health blocks basically everything, except for expensive cards like 6 and up. And then once per turn, you can pay a single power and sacrifice 2 units to draw 2 cards. Like, this card actually seems very playable. Like, in not only Granite decks, but also some sort of like Stone Scar mid-range deck that's playing like low-value units in the late game.
I think this card is really interesting. So, like, if we are talking about like a big Stone Scar Granite deck, I can totally see this being a part of it. Like, he's an engine. You can afford to wait till like turn 6, you know, in slower matchups to make sure you can sack something to get the value from him. And in fast matchups, like, you play him and he's a great blocker. So I kind of like this card for the Granite deck.
It also turns Granite Drone into pay 2, draw 2.
Yeah.
I think the card is fine. Like, 4/6 is reasonable.
Some play, but my somewhat problem with this is that I feel like Grenadin don't want to have a 5 drop. They feel like they really want like low cost, very cheap minions that are Grenadins. And this seems pricey for the kind of archetype Grenadin feels like it should be.
So there's definitely going to be like a fast Grenadin deck, but then the question is like, is there going to be a Gear Cruncher deck? And if there is, I think this is going into it.
Yeah,
did you guys ever like see or play Scrappy Hour?
I saw you play it.
Yeah, it's just like the big like Scrap Tank Witching Hour deck. I think you can cut Witching Hour and cut out the Primal cards. Like, it was splashing for Champion of Cunning just for the Shadow buff and for Scouting Party. And I think you can cut all of the Primal cards in the Witching Hours, just play like Scrapper and Gear Cruncher and like Topple Tower and like all these good cards and like have a good power base and just be like a good grindy Grenadin deck.
That might very much be possible, and if it is, then this seems like a very good way to just gain card advantage from very low impact cards at that point in time.
Yeah, that's true.
Alright, moving on to expensive shadow cards. I think the first one we're talking about is Zelia the Vayne.
Yeah. So she's definitely interesting in that she is wanting you to play more of a sort of value, slower, grindy game. And so we were actually talking about that earlier. I definitely think she is going to have a deck. I don't know if it's going to be the best Unseen deck, because she's making you pay a lot of power and avoid attacking usually to get the bond. But her effect is really good, and it's a nice ongoing effect that you can pay for this ability.
Yeah, it's also our first bond card, so maybe we could explain it a bit.
Oh yeah, so bond is a cost reduction mechanic. So if you have a unit in play that is the same type as the bond unit in your hand, you can exhaust the bond unit in play to reduce the cost by that unit's strength. So I think how it's generally going to work with Zelia is you'll like play a Miris, who's a 3/2 on turn 2. Then turn 3, instead of attacking with Miris, you'll pay 3 and exhaust her to cast Zelia. And that actually kind of is an aggressive start, right? Like, you're giving up an attack for 3, but you're getting a 4/4 deadly for 3.
Like, sure, that's very aggressive in that sense. Like, I'm very not convinced about the mechanic in Yun. It's mostly because the fact that there are some cards that the bond seems powerful on that are obviously not like tempo-oriented cards in the first place. But like, for instance, Zelia seems like it's a very, like, you want to play this in more an aggressive shell. It might just not be the case, and you might just want to play a really grindy deck with like Curses Matter. And if it's Curses Matter, then the bond mechanic is fine. If you're trying to like tempo your opponent and kill them, then I think bond is too slow and too awkward to play.
So the important thing to note is that like 2 of the big unseen that you want to be playing have more attack than they have power. And so that means that if you have enough power, you can play like 2 cards in one turn with a significant discount, right? Like if you want to play Rindra and Zelia in the same turn, that costs 5 power. That's a really powerful 5 power play.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like those kinds of plays are very powerful in that sense because you can't even attack. So those moments are really, really powerful. You just have to like evaluate how likely am I to have these cards in hand, and how am I going to be able to do this on 5, or am I like basically gonna sit with like cards like Celia in my hand and do nothing, or am I going to be able to like ramp them out and crush my opponent by just vomiting like value creatures in that sense?
I mean, I think, yeah, it is going to somewhat depend on the speed that you want to go at, and that maybe if you have an all-out aggro deck, you don't want to. But I've been starting to think, because before we talked about, not in this, but how you don't want to exhaust your Rindra that's able to attack to play this card. But, if you're able to exhaust Amiris or able to exhaust something that you play in the same turn, I can see her just being a really good card that it can sort of be a card that you can play aggressively, but then if you ever, you're playing your aggro deck and you get into a board stall, it can actually help you escape out of it. Because she grows too. It's not just the curse. Like, she gets big.
Oh, no, like she grows fairly rapidly to like kill things.
So it sort of depends on how reliable can you make your aggro deck that you don't want to play her, I guess. Is that maybe you can make a really reliable Felon aggro deck, or maybe you put her not in Felon too.
I just noticed that she grows the same amount as Shadowlands Bone Picker for 1 less while shrinking an enemy unit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
so I definitely she is a good unit. We'll have to see exactly what deck she goes in. I think she will be in some deck.
Yeah,
like, I think the card is powerful on its own, like just ignoring it gets played with. Because playing 4 to give -2/+1 and stuff like that is just strong in general. But it's like, can you build decks with this? And if you can, it might be very, very strong.
Yeah, it's like the card has a good body for its stats, and it has a pay 4, have +4/+2 board swing. It's pretty good.
Well, I think it is important to think that if you actually pay 6 for it, then it's kind of not good.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, but like that's never or close to never gonna happen.
Right. So as long as you're not doing that, if you ever do have to actually hardcast it, then she's pretty poor. But
so, do we think any of the Shadow Legendaries are playable? I think Valkyrie Harvester is the closest, but probably still not there.
Maybe. I mean, I'm actually kind of curious about Callous Survivalist. That, like I was saying, like I think Stone Scar Gunslingers could be a deck, and so then the question is, like what is it that you need to exhaust in order to get this guy out? Because obviously you need to bond him.
Well, you like end of turn Cabal Countess on turn 4, and then turn 5 this guy. The main problem to me is that 2 spells. Like, what deck is gonna have 2 spells in hand? Like,
I mean, sometimes
decks, I
only
guess.
1 is enough, right? Like if they have no spells, then you're like, okay. But like if you're against a control deck and you're able to get this effect off, then you might just win on the spot.
Well, you could exhaust Jack, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about that. I'm like, not only do you exhaust your best attacker, but you also somehow have triple fire, triple shadow.
Well, hey, you can do it on 7, right? You play Jack and then immediately exhaust it for the survivalist.
There we go.
It's like Voprex, but not bad.
Oh, baby.
Yeah, and then they can't harsh rule because you just discarded their harsh rules.
Yeah,
there you go.
Officially
I mean, so the effect is good. So the sort of question is, how often can you actually play this card? Because it's obviously really hard to play. And so I kind of feel like it's worth experimenting, investigating, that it is worth at least looking at. It might just end up being like, you just can't play this card. Like, you just never can cast it. But it's worth at least looking at.
Also, we could also specify if you ever happen to hit 9 mana and cast this card, it's terrible.
Yeah, you only get the effect if you bond.
Oh, nice.
So.
Oh, that's true. Oh, yeah, okay.
They do all this just to try and counter, reanimating, and as a result, they make it so you can't even cast the goddamn card.
Alright, so our next card is Crests. So these are obviously extremely powerful, but I don't know what even needs to be said about this.
All are
I
fantastic.
am upset that there is no Rakano crest.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, and no Xenon crest, and no Huru crest.
I know.
Are you
What is
serious?
This is weird.
I don't really mind just making that public.
Oh yeah, because the Feln crest is okay though, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
That's pretty good.
So
I
anyway,
like
now that we
it.
got that out of the way, so these are definitely really good cards, right? But they're not a necessarily auto slam in every deck. So the question is like, what are the requirements for you to play these cards?
Yeah, so you don't want to play them in hyper-aggressive decks, because there the depleted really matters. You want to play them in slower
Yeah.
mid-range or controlling decks where you can afford to take a turn off, as long as you're still playing enough undepleted power to hit your key turns, like your turn 3 Cambrai Healer, or your turn 4 Sanchez Type, and your turn 5 Harsh Rule. Like, you're okay playing the crests on turn 1, or turn 2, or turn 6, or maybe turn 4. Like, you're generally able to find a spot to play them, and they just smooth out your draws so much. Every slow deck wants some number of them.
Yeah, they're powerful. Like, you just have to be careful about how many you add to your deck.
Yeah,
In terms
like
of
if you're
actually
playing
being
3
able to play.
faction and you just like jam 8 of them and then you
Yeah, it's
never
gonna be a
play
good
anything
bit,
on
but-
curve. It's
I
like
mean,
that
if-
old what is it, the FTS deck that just played like literally every shadow duel and it was
Yeah.
just always a turn behind.
Like, I do think that, like, any deck that's running banners, okay, playing banners as depleted sigils or mana,
Yeah,
is just going
exactly.
to swap these by default, because they're just better than
Yep.
Yeah,
if you're not planning
that's
to have
exactly
them.
what I did.
Alright, so what do we think about 4 mana 7/7?
Uh,
Monolith
Get
Guardian.
silence and cry.
Right.
Like, if you Power Stone into this, you just win, right? I mean, I guess it dies to silence.
Like it still dies to removal. Like play a good
Have you met Valkenforcer and Fun Police?
Yeah,
they like
and
this
Purify.
Yeah.
Oh man, or banish, right? You think you have 4 mana 7/7, they banish your relic, and then you have 4 mana 1/1 that trades into whatever.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I do
I
know.
think this card isn't that great. Like, I think it's too situational, and there are too many ways to, like, completely blow it out.
The premium looks pretty cool. I'll give it that.
I think
Oh,
if
yeah,
you're
that's-
playing a Bond deck with what, Nova Quake Titan or whatever,
Oh,
you
yeah.
play this guy, but I don't think that deck is playable. So this guy, I
I
think
suppose
we'll be
that's like one of
experimenting
the
with a lot.
only ways you start to being able to cast Nova Quake.
Yeah, I just think ultimately it won't be good enough.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I don't think it's great. Due to, like, the
Like-
limitations and the restrictions means that you can actually have a 4 mana 1/1.
Like,
So-
all good decks have either silences or relic removal, so I don't know.
So
Like, this is going to get owned either way.
when looking at Whirling Duo, my first thought was this is a card that's excellent against fire aggro decks, but it's a 3-drop that dies to Torch. But then I heard Unearthly really likes it, so convince
It's
me
a
why this
war
card is
cry.
I
good.
mean, I said one line about it when it was spoiled, so it's kind of hard to it's hard to say what it is going to do. The question is like, so is Rakano Gunslingers a deck? So we've actually gone through the cards, and there weren't really any good Justice Gunslingers. Like we went over Stella, right, and that was it. So the question is, why play Rakano Gunslingers over Stone Scar Gunslingers? Because there's actually a number of like good Shadow Gunslingers that make the Fire Shadow work, whereas the Fire Justice does not really. Like this card on its own, like having charge is really good. It helps in a metagame when you have armory. You really want as many charge units as you can. So the only question is like, is Rakano like, even a deck? Because Rakano play has been out of the meta for a while. And it sort of needed something. And while this is sort of good, I don't think it's enough to make the deck good. And yeah, I guess that's where I sort of stand. Like the card on its own is okay, but I don't think it's enough.
Well, my opinion is that I feel like this card really, really, really wants to get buffed by Warcry, and Rakano is one of the best deck to actually Warcry this. Like, if this get is by any Warcry ever, the card is bunkers.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, in general, charge units hold Warcry really well because they can get immediate value out of them.
Yeah, and
And
lifesteal,
against
like
aggro, right? Yeah, you sort of swing with this, and like you just win. They don't get any chance, like because aggro decks are often spending all of their power, right, to develop. So if you're then able to just play this, swing in, if it got Warcry, that means that they probably can't block and kill it. So that means you got your attack in, you got your life, and then they either have to decide to now remove it, or now what? Just
Try and race a 4/4 lifesteal.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, I do think this card, if Rakano does come back, I do think this is because it does help you really like pummel Stone Scar matchups and stuff like that.
Yeah. So it's sort of yeah. I feel like if there is a Rakana deck coming out of the set, that it's probably going to be a part of it. Well, I should say aggressive Rakana deck, because obviously you're not going to be playing this in Armory. I'm not seeing it right now, but we'll have to play around with the cards and see if anything can come together.
So does Tinker Drone Dropper help the aggressive
So
Rakano
this
deck?
is a Stone Sky, right? Like, and they accidentally printed it in Rakano. Like, why is this?
Yeah.
Why does this card exist? What?
You know that old.
Is it like double fire, double justice, 4-drop, 3/4? I mean, I guess it has
3/4.
flying.
think
I
it figured
completely missed that. It has flying. That's okay.
The art's okay.
I mean, it still costs 4. And,
It's
like-
probably just worse than Crimson Firemaw, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we have Firemon now, so I mean, like, it doesn't die to Vanquish, I guess, but it still costs
And like
4.
Vulcan Forcer. Like we
Right.
have Vulcan Forcer on 3, and then like Fireman on 4, and we have this.
Yeah, it's not really good.
So what about Auric Record Keeper? This seems like a shoe-in that maybe
yeah.
makes Cambrai aggro good again.
Like, Cambrai aggro isn't even bad right now, and like you give it an additional good 3-drop. Like, it already
Yeah.
has Seraph and Enforcer. Like, I don't know if you can put more good 3-drops into the deck.
So
Like,
it's
you
kind of funny
place
to
Can
me,
you
like,
imagine every other deck in the game being like, oh no, I have too many good 3-drops. Which one do I put in? Like, you
Like-
really are spoiled in this deck.
Like, it's
That
not.
you're considering not playing a 4/4 for 3. I think,
Like,
I mean, because
it's
it's kind
not-
of like, when do you want to play this over Seraph? Because it does attack better.
Oh, yeah, it does.
So it sort of depends on whether or not you want to sort of go all in on actually killing your opponent and losing out on that late game, randomly winning with Seraph.
But, like, there's also, like, another component of Seraph that's not the late game component. The fact that Seraph carries weapons way better and carries buffs way better due to the Overwhelm.
I don't
Like,
think
if you
you ever play
play
it
Cambrai
over
aggro,
Seraph.
Overwhelm isn't trivial on Seraph, because with both Obelisk and Finest Hour and Stand Together, you can normally get Seraph to 5 and 6 fairly easily.
That's true.
I think you just play all of them. And 12 3-drops isn't too many.
Yeah, no, it's not
I
too
mean,
much.
maybe you just play it instead of Reality Warden and just have a more consistent early game.
Yeah, that sounds
Just
completely
Yeah, I
murder
agree.
people with your 4/4 for 3. like-
Yeah.
I mean, on the play, 3 mana 4/4 is insane.
Yeah.
Just go
And
Awakened
then you
Student
play
into
Titan on
this.
4.
And
Yeah.
at least, yeah, it's like, so what I found playing, Rakano into Cambrai is that, like, against the normal Cambrai, like, Finest Hour is one of your only ways of, like, beating them in combat. And so then when they're playing Finest Hour 2, like, you just never win, right? Like, they have the bigger unit, and then they Finest Hour, and you kill, like, 3 of their blockers that they're trying to, somehow not die with.
Alright,
So,
so,
yeah.
alright, so Shush is completely unplayable, but I just want to
Yep.
point out it's having the funniest Reddit thread of the whole spoiler season. People are saying this card needs to be banned and that it's OP and stuff.
It's because they are all playing Echo Macto, and they're like, oh no, my deck, my deck.
Right. So, Eileen Clanmother, I guess, is the next card.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's an interesting
Oh,
card.
it's insane. This card is super good.
So she's, like, with the turn she's played, she's the biggest flyer on the board in every
And
single game.
endurance.
Yeah,
but, like,
remember
still,
how hard
it's-
Tavrod was to kill as a 7 health endurance? Yeah, now give him flying.
yeah.
And silence
The
2 enemy
difference is
units
it
on
comes
summon.
down to
And be able to
translation.
pay 8 to kill
down.
those, and buffer.
Bring down, flying is a downside.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and also the fact that its ultimate is like right the turn after you played this. You played this,
Right.
and turn afterwards you ultimated.
Yeah, so what commonly played units don't have a battle skill? Like, so obviously the ones she silences, she's gonna kill. But what other units die to this ultimate?
Like, it's value units, you're looking
Is
at
Killer a
Bloodcaster.
battle skill?
What did you say?
Is Killer a battle skill?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, anything that's
Heart
not
of
highlight-
Evolve?
Anything
How does
besides
it dies?
Entomb or Empower, basically.
Oh, no, there's
Or summon.
Warcry, not Warcry, summon.
Work-
Summon
yeah.
is not a battle skill, and
Right.
No, but-
And
most-
Warp is not a battle skill.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, Heart is the primary one it kills that you're looking at. But it also cleans up, like, Bloodcasters and other cards similar to those that have activated abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't
Yeah, I
kill
guess-
Seraph,
well-
unfortunately, because Seraph has Overwhelm, so...
Yeah, but like combined with the silence, this is just like most of an
Oh, yeah,
Iron
it's
Thorn ult
powerful.
at half the cost.
yeah, exactly.
Like, this card is
Because
insane.
you silence the units, so you kill them afterwards.
Right, but the idea is that if your opponent had vanilla units, you could silence the utility low units and then kill their big units. But even if you just silence, 2 good units that you want to kill and then you kill them, that's amazing.
Yeah, I just really wish Huru had a crest, because, like, this card puts Huru on the map by itself, right? Like, this card is insane.
Well, that's actually an interesting point. Is the question is what deck does Aelin go into? Like, Huru 2 faction has not been a deck at all. So it's not in either.
Doesn't Island make it a deck? Like Tavrod made Argent Port a deck?
So does it make Huru control a deck? Does it make some Huru mid range with lots of draw a deck? Or is she because she's only double influence?
Yeah, she's actually fairly easy to cast given how
so you can play her in a 3 faction deck, because people already play Akari in 2 faction decks. So hey, this is even easier than that.
Like Huru control has been like fringe, like maybe not on ladder, but like in tournaments, it's been like on the outskirts looking in. It doesn't really need all that much to like become good.
So Huru control in the ETS has one of the lowest win rates.
Sure.
Wait, it was just missing an 8/9 flying endurance that kills your opponent's board.
Oh yeah, that's all it needed.
Yeah, but my counter argument to that is that a Worlds player brought Huru Flyers to Worlds, meaning it's good, right?
No.
Yes.
It kind of got dumped.
You can look at his record. And even if you take that, this card does not go into that deck.
No, I'm just kidding. But I feel like I was messing around in the last 2 weeks with a kind of like big flyers in Huru with Nostrix. It was super fun. Not that good, but very, very fun. And I feel like that could slot in. Like you maybe not want like a 4 of this card, but you kind of like want a 2 of, and maybe you don't want a 4 of Nostrix, so you kind of balance this out, and it could be good.
I think she's much better than Nostrix.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in the end, it's going to be finding a deck for the card. The card itself is great, but you just need to find where to put it. Like maybe
the card is
put
good,
it in like something like Ikaria Blue, and that comes back. Because strategize is much easier for that deck than
just talking like
Wisdom of the Elders.
Okay.
So while we're on the topic
now
of
instead of Ikaria Blue, it's Aelin Red.
Island Red. Oh. Alright, so how about our other Scion? Multifaction Scion. We got Talir too. But Caleb Reborn.
Wait, before that, you missed a very good card. Rooftop Vigilante.
Rooftop Vigilante?
Both Argent Port cards are actually pretty interesting.
Alright, tell me about Rooftop Vigilante. I totally did not think this card was playable.
Dude, this card, like, okay. I only played like 30 or so games. This card has been MVP, man. It's like Warcry with some kind of evasion is insane. Like, it blocks very well, like these lower to the ground unit. And you don't care about your units wielding weapons or deadly. It's just another Valkyrie. You play this into Valkyrie Spire Guard, into like Makto, and it's a super good curve. You play this in a deck that really wants to Warcry, so you put like Rune Hammers, and you want like maybe Sword of Icarias or other types of weapons, and other good units that, like, let's say Makto really likes to get buffs as well. And you play Icaria on the top end, and this card has been MVP.
Yeah, I played some against him. Like, Warcry on evasive units is powerful. It does help with curve purposes, because if you look at it, otherwise those decks don't really have many 3-drops. I do think the card is gonna be like surprisingly powerful.
So yeah, the interesting thing is if you want to make an entirely evasive like Argent Port deck. So like if you look at my Worlds deck with the different variations on it, is like I had to play Interrogator once Bart got nerfed, right? And it's a good card that can often, work, but it's not evasive. And so if you want to just play entirely evasive, this card does let you do it. I'll have to see whether or not being a 2/3, matters or not, because that is, pretty weak. But it is a flyer that, does allow you to hit that density to play Valkyries and like Spire Guard.
Yeah, I like Spire Guard a lot in Bruised by God's deck, like early on in the Omens metagame.
I tried that deck. The problem was that you just didn't, like, you often were playing too low units, and that you didn't have that many good ways to turn on Spire Guard. And so I sort of feel like some of these cards are helping fill in those weaknesses.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
onto our Scion here. So Caleb is a 4/4 for 4 with when you play a spell, it's +1/+1. So it's you like use Wisdom as a combat trick. And then this ultimate is super strong. Pay 6 to put your hand back and draw +1. Like in the late game, these sort of decks end up with a couple of power they can't use. Like their curve tops off at 6 or whatever, so they end up with 2 power in hand, and just bam, draw 3 cards. This guy seems like he's gonna see a lot of play if the Skycrag mid-range deck like materializes.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. Is it's sort of like what deck does he go into, and so generally it would be like you want to play this and like have your curve not go above like 5, and that way you just sort of accumulate sigils and then you trade them all out. But you probably in that case need a lot of burn, right? Because you're playing this, 4/4 for 4, which is not the best rate. It does have the buff effect, but you need like you're trading your hand to like win you the game in like a turn or 2. So I don't think like just getting a bunch of big units is going to be enough.
No, you're right in that thing. I think you're looking to play Obliterate. Maybe even Flame Blast comes back. It seems like you maybe even want to play like more if you don't want to play Flame Blast.
So you put this guy in Skycrag aggro?
Well, not necessarily aggro, but you could go a bit heavier. Like you could go up and play like Soulfire Drakes, maybe Sky Terror. Like you may... Like I'm not completely convinced you want to hit that high, but it does allow you to play heavier cards. Also, I think it's really interesting the fact that you're willing to print prowess cards, since the only prowess card we had before was the Fevered Scout.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed like we might get more of these, and like if we get enough Spells Matter cards, we could hit a point where it becomes really real.
Yeah, if you levitate this guy and then like torch a unit, like that's a big chunk of damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes the ultimate will be a 6 cost, what's it called? The 8 cost shadow spell. Discard your hand and draw. Yeah. Sometimes it's just gonna be a Sleepless Night.
Yeah.
Like anyone who played Magic and have played with Wheel of Fortune effects know how powerful they are.
Yeah.
The thing with Wheel though, and even Sleepless Night, is that they draw you a fixed number of cards.
Oh yeah, sure.
This is more like a windfall, right?
Yeah, sure.
It's
like
Chandra Flamecaller 0 ability if you are making a Magic reference.
Yeah.
Alright, so Iceberg Warchief, obligatory Yeti Lord. Don't think there's much to say there.
It's fantastic art. It has probably one of the best Yeti arts ever. It looks actually really nice.
All the Yeti have hilarious art, really.
But I think we should just move on to some of the more
Yeah,
broken ones.
Rindra. It's got 5 keywords on it.
Creator of archetype.
So-
Shit, this card.
So I kind of want to touch on Rindra. Like, obviously, good card is good.
5 keywords is good.
Well, it doesn't actually have 5 keywords. It only has 2 keywords.
Well, 5 things pop up when I click on it. Oh, I guess Nightfall
sure.
and Summon don't really
Nightfall,
count. Yeah.
Nightfall and stuff is a thing.
Yeah.
But basically, the fact that this card costs 4 allows you to even Haunting Spirit. And if you want to say that 2-mana deal 5 is powerful, yes, it is. And then you can even play Dark Return, and you can then replay it the next turn, and it has charge. So.
And now we have to deal 6 because of Nightfall.
Are you
Yeah,
playing
then
Are you playing Scream in just like your typical like Felm tempo aggro deck?
Oh, no,
or
no.
Are you just adding
yeah,
this to a Scream deck with Fnatic?
Basically, what I did was that I built basically some variation of Scream and tempo and aggro, and I decided to, since every card in the deck is basically 4 or lower, that means that your Haunting Scream becomes burn spells more or less. And if you're allowed to play Haunting Scream and Dark Returns to like add burn to your deck or fast damage in that sense,
Yeah,
you can even play
Rindra also
cards
helps
like-
there too, because her ultimate deals like 2 damage, and then every time you make it night, that's a shock.
Oh, mirrors, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's relevant in that sense, and you can also like just then play Gorgon Fnatic since you're already playing Haunting Scream, and you need to find ways to close out games, and just drawing cards is powerful at that point. In general, you just play like some of the most broken early game cards like Instigator and Mirrors, and then your 3-drop slot is kind of pathetic with only Gale. But then you get to play Rindra and Doom, and you get to murder people with really good units.
Yeah,
two-
like,
two
having played
drops.
versus
4-drops.
Having played versus Elunex's deck like about 10 times, it's extremely tilting. Like Rindra, I've raged at Rindra, and it's fucking day 1.
Alright, so look forward to seeing a lot of Rindra on ladder. Alright, so we got another 4-drop here in the set that I think is going to see a lot of play. That's Vicious Highwayman. So, I think this goes in every Stone Scar deck that doesn't want Bandit Queen. Like, if you're going wide, you want Queen. If you're going tall, you want Highwayman.
So the only important thing to note is that you are competing with both Impending Doom and Firemaw. So if, like, Impending Doom, once people looked at Firemaw and saw that it died to Runehammer, sort of saw it go away. So it sort of depends whether or not, though, you want to play... like if you're okay not playing the 8 flyers, because I think like Skijay's Mahler's deck was playing like I think around 7 between them. But if you're okay with replacing it, like for ladder, this is actually a really good anti-aggro card. If people are still playing rally, then they're going to be really upset when you play this card.
Yeah, that's what I think. Like you can slam this in your sideboard if you or slightly slower burn deck, and just like okay, if I ever place like Skycrag or any rough matchup that's actually faster than me, I'll just play of like a quick draw lifesteal charge unit and completely just swing the game back in my favor.
Yeah, you can also get to bring it in against Armory. Like, I think that Armory is really afraid of this card.
The only like downside with bringing it versus Armory, you're unlikely to try the lifesteal. But
you don't care about the lifesteal in this.
Sure, but no, but like lifesteal is relevant in games where you can randomly get hit for like 16 by a die show and it feels bad.
So against Armory, it's just 4 power. It's 4 power for a 5 strength charge guy.
Yeah. No, like the card is good. Like I think this is very good, and like sure it competes with Queen if you're playing an aggressive style, but you can just play slower and it's really powerful, and you can always trigger lifesteal and quick draw by just playing removal.
Yeah,
so it's just like, good.
Do you think?
Yeah, but also keep in mind that the argument is good against Armory is. I don't know. I don't think Armory will be in a good spot after the set. Like, it got nothing, and everything got, like, way crazier, so I don't know.
You'll find a way. I believe in you.
I'm okay with you.
So, Xenon Ramp finally got a not crappy ramp card. They've been kind of pushing this archetype, but with, like, garbage cards like Azendel and Mask of Torment. I think Duskwalker is actually playable.
Yeah, this is good. Yeah.
So it's interesting in that you're starting to ramp on 4, so this is normally where you're like, alright, let's play Sandstorm Titan and stabilize the board. So, yeah, like you don't get the power right away, so you have to wait until you untap, and then you can like play an Ascendant.
Yeah, turn 5 Ascendant or Gift, that's pretty good.
Yeah. The problem with playing turn 5 Gift is triple Shadow, so that seems more unreliable. But Ascendant is mono time, so that seems way easier to cost, and then you can even play land.
Oh yes.
Yeah, Ascendant plus power. Like I think this guy sees a lot of play. Like it's a solid body on curve. Dodges Annihilate, ramps you.
Yeah.
Do you think like the big Xenon deck would play this card?
So like the version like Rhino and I played at Worlds is a control deck and doesn't want this, but the version like Bruised by God plays with Power Stone and stuff and 12 6-drops definitely wants this.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Bruised by God is like my teammate now. Welcome, Bruce. And yeah, he said like I just want to get to 6 no matter what, and that gets you to 6 no matter what.
Yeah, like I missed this card and it looks powerful.
Oh, it's maximum power, right? So okay, never mind. I was
you can't use
holy
it
shit,
when
it
you
gives you
play it.
already 2 power.
No,
You can't initiation it right away. Alright, only a couple cards left here. One of them is the only 3-faction card in Eternal. Kyriak's Insatiable Seeker. So after seeing the set, I don't think there are enough relics to really turn on the 7/7-ness, but maybe it's worth playing just for the Infiltrate Draw 3. The problem is it's in the worst possible 3-faction combination. Like, Firetime Primalist has no good removal.
Yeah.
You get to ramp into it if you can cast it.
Ramp into a 6 influence.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I guess there is that new guy, that 2-1 for 2. That card is super good in the Kyriak's deck.
Like, ramping into this card seems like a pipe dream no real.
And not only that, but like the ability doesn't even work if you just like ramp into it, right? Because you need to have 5 or more spells in your void, you know.
It's not unconditional, the ultimate.
Yeah, like, you need to have 5 spells as well. That's true. Yeah, I don't think this guy is actually good, but
No,
The art is cool.
The art is very neat. That's basically how you decide a card is terrible. When you
I actually
talk about
don't
art.
like the premium of this one. The fire looks kind of dumb.
Yeah,
I
that's
need to
true.
check.
Yeah, take a look.
Yeah, but also, can we just acknowledge the fact that a world where Lysa doesn't like this card and think it's bad is not a world I want to live in? Because I feel like you are the prime target for this card.
This is no knuckle bones.
Like,
Yeah, but it
No,
still
I
draws
mean
you
this
3
isn't
cards
that
for free,
fun
right?
to play, right? Like you just like most of the time you play and it literally does nothing. Knucklebones always does something, right? Like it never doesn't do something.
well,
Yeah,
Sure.
and
Yeah,
then
It might cause you to
lastly
lose
we
the
have
game,
the
but
biggest
it always
buff.
does something.
The biggest buff to strangers yet, Common Cause. Is strangers playable now that it has perfect influence?
No.
Nope.
No?
The answer to is strangers playable will always be no.
Have you cast
I
a
mean, I
triumphant
almost
stranger?
wonder, like, if you could just ignore influence completely with strangers, could you still make a good deck?
You get a 3-power 5/5. You get a 3-power 3/3
Sure.
that buffs your whole board. You get a 5-power 2/2 that gets bigger, and if they don't kill it immediately, you win the game. Like, I think it's closer than you think.
so we're still playing tribal day-based decks, and like they can just completely collapse, which is an issue. Like tribal is very dependent on you drawing the right pieces at the right order. Like more so than other decks, because you're not like okay just drawing an early game unit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Common Cause is going to
I mean,
always
I
be
think-
on if you're playing 30 units of the type you care
Oh, like
about.
common cause is not gonna be like the problem why tribal, like why strangers isn't. Why stranger isn't working is because of the cards themselves, not because of
Okay.
like the fixing.
But so outside of it, like, do we think that this card will see play in, say, like, whether it's Valkyrie or Yeti or Gunslinger? Is this going to just replace, like, Diplomatic Seal? Is this going to enable you to do something, like go 3-faction, where before you'd say, no, that's crazy?
Is there a 3-faction tribe? I mean, I guess there's gunslingers.
Gunslingers?
Valkyrie.
Valkyrie,
Valkyrie are just
sort of,
Argent Board,
like,
right?
Well, you
There's
have
a
Valkyrie
few
have fire.
ones.
Valkyrie for sure.
you have
Like,
the
there's
one
the
two.
4-cost 1/2.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vicar, yeah.
Sure, but like I don't think you play this card to play Ikaria.
Common Cause? Oh, no.
Yeah, so I
No,
guess I don't know if Common Cause actually sees play anywhere except in strangers, but
Yeah, like the card is good if you can make it a tribal deck that's good. The problem is making a tribal that's good.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
I
like,
think, yeah, like Tony was talking about Valkyries. I think that could be a deck. I'll have to see about Gunslingers. I think there is something there, especially in Stone Scar. You know, maybe it only ends up as like a tier 2 deck, but I think it's a playable deck, and they have some, you know, difficult influence requirements, and maybe that'll help.
I think the biggest problem for making gunslingers work in Stone Scar is the fact that Chacha is not a gunslinger. Because if Chacha was a gunslinger, the card like would help the trying to play tribal immensely.
Yeah.
Like, are you willing to skip Chacha to play tribal gunslinger? Or are
I
you
mean,
gonna
maybe
go
you
like,
just don't play 100% tribal.
well, it's like, do I play Chacha even though it's not a gunslinger? Like, how badly
Yeah.
does that affect me, or does it actually
it's-
benefit me?
it's
Like
worth it
you,
still.
there's gonna be a lot of hard cards to evaluate on that sense due to the fact that the
Mhm.
cards are maybe not on tribal. And it's the same thing with like maybe the bond mechanics, and why I'm skeptical to bond mechanics is like, how many bad unseens do I need to play like Celia? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's the
Right.
breaking point? Like, how good is the card for me to play bad cards to get out?
Right, because the question is like, is Mirrors and Rindra enough to play Zelia? And if not, then what do you need to play in order to play her?
Yeah, and then it's like, well, do I want to tap Rindra? Like, if you have the fantasy scenario that you have Rindra and you have 5 mana in, you know, and you can play Rindra and tap it and play Celia, like, yeah, that's fantastic. But what happens when you untap on 5 and you can swing with Rindra? Like, you really don't want to miss that attack? Like, those are the things that I'm looking at, and it's like, how good is the card versus, like, what's the payoff?
Alright, so to kind of wrap up the set review here, what are the 2 cards you think are going to see the most play out of the Dusk Road, excluding the crests? That's cheating.
Rindra.
Rindra is definitely number 1, I think, no question. So the question is, though, what is number 2?
It's gonna heavily depend on which tribe is going to come out on top.
Like, I'm
Because-
completely unbiased, so I'm gonna say Rindra and Mirrors. I think they're the two most pushed cards in the set.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that it's strong. Rindra's Devil Influence, though. I think the two most played cards are going to be Mirror, Nightshade, and Strategize.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah, Strategize, actually,
for
never
sure.
mind.
Yeah, Strategize is like bunkers, yeah.
Yeah,
But-
Strategize and Mirrors, I changed my answer, because Rindra is harder to cast. Thank you, Ace, for correcting me.
So everybody
So-
thinks it's the Feln cards, huh? It's Feln's time to shine?
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
Fel Control got a huge buff this set. It's an insane buff. Like, Fel Control will... I mean, depending on what meta we are in, like, if Grenadin are, like, the tribal thing that's gonna storm the ladder, then Fel Control is gonna be insane.
The thing is, though, as you said that, like, the Felon decks are the powerful. You do realize that both of those are monofaction, so you can build, like, Huru
Making
and,
enough
like...
Yeah, and that's why I
Or-
picked them. I think
yeah.
they're going to go in other decks, too. Like, I think
Oh,
Strategize
yeah,
is
yeah.
going to go in literally every Primal deck. I think Mirror's Nightshade goes in every single
Strategize
deck.
is
Instigator is in.
Strategize is so nuts.
Oh yeah, it's auto-included in any, like, some decks will want to splash blue for this card. Like,
Yeah, there's finally a
Well,
reason to splash Primal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Primal
So,
good cards, what the
An
fuck?
important point about talking about the cards that will see the most play is that a lot of the cards in the other factions, like whether it's Fire or Justice, are more deck specific. So like we have Grenadins, we have Valkyries that they're more playing towards their tribes, and so they're not going to see as much generic play like these other ones.
Yeah. Strategize is bonkers. Play it.
Yeah, so thanks for coming out for the set review, everyone. I'll put this on YouTube shortly after this. Probably take a while to encode, and yeah, that was fun. We should do this for every set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we should do this every week.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.